he has the best comebacks. The problem is just if you actually say those things to people, they don't like you because you're being really, really shitty.
You will get hit in the face, potentially,
Yeah.
if you decide to come up to somebody and tell them that, you fucking suck. But
Yeah, I mean, there's the scene where they're at the prison and, like, Nina's like, wait, Matthias isn't fighting in the ring, right? And Kaz's like, well, we didn't come here for the ambiance. And it's like, Kaz! You could have just said, well, he does. Quack.
Hello, and welcome to the Little Duck Book Club with Duck number 1,
Ren, and duck number 2.
Anna. And today we're going to talk about Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. A book I think we both have good opinions of, I think.
Well, my opinions are always good. I don't know if the books are.
That's true.
No, it's a good book. And I also think probably everyone listening to this is familiar with it. It's one of the most well-known YA books at the time, I think.
It came out in September 2015, so a while ago. And it's part of a duology, but inside of the Grishaverse, if you've read Shadow and Bone or the consecutive books afterwards, King of Scars, that goes right in there. For me, it was my first reread. I have never reread this book after I read it for the first time.
Me neither. I read...
Really?
Hilariously, I read Six of Crows in 2016.
So
I read it
when it came
a long
out.
time ago. And I read Crooked Kingdom right after it came out. Yeah, I haven't read these in a while. My Six of Crows in the back, says, ooh, the sequel will be coming out, but the name wasn't even revealed yet. So it's it is really that old.
Yeah, maybe Crooked Kingdom was the second of the duology.
Yeah, of the duology. I feel like everyone also knows this. Anyone who's into online book communities enough to listen to this probably already knows.
just wanted to point it out.
Yeah, no, very, very good, yeah.
I feel
keeping this accessible.
I feel like Six of Crows for a lot of people was kind of one of the first books to read when getting back into reading. At least it was for me, and then I looked around and a lot of people, I saw the same feedback. I think I read it in 2018 or something, 2017, 2018, because a friend of ours told me that you liked it. So I was like, all right, I'm going to try it out. I'm going to see if I like it. And I did.
But yeah, it's also... I feel like a lot of people's entry into the Grishaverse, because it is, quite frankly, in my personal opinion, leagues better than the Grisha trilogy.
It is.
And you also don't need to read that to read this.
Yeah.
And also it is much more specific. There aren't that many fantasy heist stories out there, especially not in YA. After Six of Crows, there are more now, but at the time there really weren't, and there still aren't. But there were a lot of chosen one, romance, heavier books out there.
Yeah, definitely.
So the Grisha trilogy doesn't stick out as much, and Six of Crows is also just better written, because it was written later. I feel like you can really tell that Leigh Bardugo has improved over
Miles'
writing career.
She
definitely.
I read Six of Crows in German, both of the books, because when I got back into reading, my first intention wasn't to read in English, but I read Shadow and Bone, the series, in English, and one time I picked up the English Six of Crows at a bookstore and was just going through it, and I was like, dang, yeah, that's a huge improvement. Because comparing a translation to an original is always a bit
yeah, because if the original's really bad, the translation can actually improve upon it, but usually it just takes nuance out of it. I personally have experienced for a lot of books I've first read in German and then later picked up in English, that the English is much more emotive, but also oftentimes it just has more understated humor that just doesn't come across in a translation, because wordplay and such things just don't translate.
I think,
and if you want to keep the content and don't want to add a shit ton to it and want to keep it as similar as possible, you just can't get those across the same.
Yeah, you always have to make that like split between keeping the energy and keeping the translation according to what happens in the book. Yeah. But yeah, we just thought talking about Six of Crows would be one of the more fun books in terms of it's not us trashing a trashy show book, but
trash show.
But us actually having fun reading the content that we're reading. Maybe a short spoiler warning for the whole rest of this episode.
Yeah, I mean, as all of our episodes, this is like a book discussion. Mm-hmm. This isn't a review. This is not going to make that much sense if you haven't read it, because we're not like explaining how things connect in the plot. We're just grabbing things that we find interesting or relevant and talk about those.
So if you haven't read the book, there's...
I recommend you do, because it's really good.
Yeah.
It's
read the
really
book.
Good.
Come back. Listen to our episode.
Yeah. Coxgun, come back. You have to come back, though. Like,
it's like, pause now.
You still gotta come back. Leave this open on your phone forever.
But yeah, I mean, super short summary. You already said it. It's a heist book. There's like a ragtag group of teenagers. They get hired to retrieve a scientist out of a high security prison in a different country. All very shady, all very, secret. And they get the scientist because they can make like a potent drug for the Grishas. And that's a big no-no for the world, essentially. And that's it. They break in there.
Yeah, they're jailbreaking a guy from high security prison, and it's also set in a fantasy story. So yeah,
things ensue. So I mean, we
shenanigans happen.
I mean, off screen, Ren already communicated to me that they have an array of notes.
I do, but also like I said, I have like 3,000 words of notes, but it's also like, when I write out notes for stuff like this, it often is also kind of stream of consciousness in parts. So
okay, yeah,
they're not like short, concise notes. It's just a lot of. But I had a lot of thoughts while reading.
But do you have any topic you'd like to start with? Is there something like burning on your tongue that whatever we start with, you will like talk about that anyways?
I mean, I feel like one of the most compelling parts about the book are the characters.
That's true.
So I feel like they're a very good place to start. And like, I have varying amounts to say about different characters, because some of them I find very not particularly interesting. Like, I understand their role in the story, but they aren't very compelling. But I think what I think is like the funniest and most instructive part of the books is Cass, because
let's start with Cass.
Yeah, it is so funny if you haven't read the books and you just see online, posting fandom stuff about book characters. Cass is part of an array of like cool, edgy book boyfriends or whatever they're called. But unlike many of the other authors, Leigh Bardugo is an adult with a brain who's like, if a guy like this exists, no one likes him. Yeah. Cass sucks so bad. He's he's very smart and he's good at his job, but inside he's pathetic, he's lonely, he's so angry and like afraid all the time. And he's such a piece of shit to everyone around him that the only people who like him despite their best thoughts. They're like, God, he sucks so bad, but somehow I still kind of like him. Yeah. Like, they're all of them are like, God, he sucks so bad. Every guy he meets is like, boy, I hate this fucking little bitch, and his like creepy dark eyes, his like fish face. Like, no one likes him. It's so important that like he is the brooding asshole character, and everyone reacts like a normal person and is like, damn, I hate this bitch.
Honestly, I mean, we're gonna get to him later, but the way I'm gonna call him Matthias, okay? I refuse to call him Matthias.
Look, Crooked Kingdom has a pronunciation guide, and Matthias is in there as Matthias, because, like...
Very good.
He's from a northern country, you know.
So, because especially Matthias, who has had no connection to the Crows at all, they break him out of prison, and he's like, who's this fucked up little emo boy? Who's this gangly dude?
He really is. He goes, who's this weird-looking, dead-eyed fucking weirdo? Who is...
Like,
why
get
is
some
he
vitamins.
like this?
Like, at least I have the excuse of having been in prison for the last year. You look like shit.
Who's this strange, evil-looking, weird guy who's, like, all wrong angles? Like, I think it's also important that, like, no one describes Kaz as attractive. The fandom seems to be of the opinion that he's really hot because they're teenagers, but most people who ever describe him physically are like, there's something wrong with this guy. Like, there's so many references to his dead, soulless, fucked up eyes. Like, it's... Somebody describes it as, like, all sharp angles, and they're also kind of unsettling. Like, he's just a weirdo. He's not suave or hot. He's just unpleasant to be around, and that makes him so funny.
I thought you can say what you want about the Netflix adaptation, but I thought the cast for The Crows was perfect. I was really scared of them casting some heartthrob, sexy dude for Cass, and then they came along with his name Freddie Carter, who's just the perfect amount of weird and just constantly annoyed, like his resting annoyance face. It's perfect for Cass because that's the way he walks around. He's just
I didn't watch it, but like from screen caps and stuff I've seen, they've also made an effort to like style him in a way that he looks super tired and
like the shadows
stressed
and
like malnourished
eyes.
All the time. It's like, this guy's unwell. It's true.
Constantly looking like, oh Jesus fucking Christ. I think so maybe in the book, each character has like their own POV, which I love, not only because it gives us introspection, but each of the POVs is also written in a different way, kind of.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just, oh, we're getting to know their thoughts, but the way they perceive the world. And Kaz is so, like, LA noir, you know, sitting there with his hat tipped. It's like, oh, gosh. The country of the people of the trail. And I was like, okay, get yourself together, dude. You're 17 years old.
But also, he's so paranoid. It's so funny. From every time you have his POV, this man is miserable. He only feels good when he can one-up someone, but it never lasts long. He's satisfied for, like, a paragraph, and after that he was once again like, my brother is dead and I hate being alive, but I'm gonna burn the world down before I can kill myself. Like, it's so funny.
It's so sensitive. I also love that from other POVs, it's like, oh my god, Cass is so mysterious. Like, he shrouds himself in shadow and he's like, so cool. And then it's Cass's POV and he's like, damn, that worked out better than I anticipated.
Yeah, it's amazing because, like, obviously in every heist story with like a ragtag team, you need the mastermind. Yeah. And usually, especially in film and stuff, you only get to hear about the plan and the thoughts of the mastermind halfway through or later. And most of that is also kept out of the story, but you often don't get their internal monologue that much. But it's so funny to see how much he has to improvise and how much just like he bullshits his way through everything, and then you see it from the outside. Everyone's like, how did he know that? And you know, inside his brain was elevator music at the time. He was just like, I don't know. Let's just stand here and look cool. But yeah, it's Cass just like, it's so good that from the other POVs, it's also a lot of stories, I feel like, who have multiple POVs, especially in YA, it feels like a gimmick, and some they were like, it feels like the editor was like, hey, multiple POVs are doing really good right now, can't you just add more? And ultimately it doesn't really add anything, but it's also, it's well done here, and you can also really tell that the other characters get to be characters in and of themselves, because like, Kaz Kaz is ultimately the most important character in the story because without him there would not be one.
Yeah.
Because he is the mastermind, the driver of, the plot for the most part. It's his personal antagonism with other people. But, like, unlike in other books where ultimately everyone revolves around him and gets, like, caught in, the maelstrom of whoever is the mastermind or the most main character of a cast, these people get to just have their own opinions. Because, like, in other worse stories, you have people who just then start fawning over how smart someone is, but here you have, like, Nina, who's just like, I hate this bitch so much. I want to punch his face, like, every third sentence.
Yeah.
And you have Matthias, who's like, this guy's fucked up. He's smart, but, like, you can't trust him. He's insane. There's something wrong with him. Deeply wrong with him. And, like, everyone around him gets to have their own opinions, and, like, they all get to dislike him to some degree or other. It's so fun.
Or, I mean, in Jasper's case, he's, like, totally enamored by the dude, right? Like, Jasper is like, okay, yeah, I feel like Kaz doesn't tell me everything there is to be told, but in the end, he has sort of a hero's view on Kaz.
Yeah.
Which I also thought was really interesting, that you have the little bit suspicious, or you have Nina, who's like, okay, you're Kaz Brecker, so what? Like, obviously, you're a great dude, but what can I get, out of this whole thing? So
I think that, also plays into the fact that, like, Nina is in her own right an adult with experiences, and Jasper, for the most part, I find him very uncompelling compared to the others, because he's just mostly a normal dude. Like, Jasper is just a guy who, like, okay, yeah, he is Grisha and he's hiding it. Sure, that adds some, like, struggle to his life, but he's just a guy with a gambling addiction. You could meet in any big city a guy who came there to study and then accidentally fell into a gambling addiction and now has, like, giant debts. Like, nowadays, you probably won't end up in a gang because that's just not as likely. Like, it's just not really a thing in most places in Europe. You're just not gonna end up in, like, a gang because you borrowed money. You're just gonna end up, like, in court or in jail because a loan shark's coming after you. Like, it's different.
Yeah, no, definitely.
But you could find this guy anywhere. Like, he's nice enough, but he's not, he doesn't have that much going on. So it's...
Yeah. I mean, we can talk about this, like, in the Jasper part. Maybe.
Yeah, no, for sure.
But yeah, I have some thoughts about Jasper. We should get to that later on. But yeah, I thought about the ages of the characters. And I mean, they're all teenagers. Matthias being the oldest one at around 18, 19. And Inej is, I think, 17, and Cass is just slightly older.
Yeah.
17, maybe 18, but
Around
I think 17.
Yeah.
And at first I thought, okay, well, they're teenagers because it's YA and it's just more appropriate.
I mean, yeah.
But I also thought I like the fact that they are teenagers, because a lot of their behavior reflects being a teenager as well. They do stuff that is not well thought out. They have these clear differences to other characters, and especially Cass being like this small, angry guy against all of the other... Because everybody else that he's beefing with is an adult in the whole...
It's so funny.
In the whole series. Especially, like, his beef with Pekka Rollins and stuff. So I kind of like that they are teenagers. It's not one of those situations where it's like, okay, they're teenagers because it's YA, but it's actually utilized in a way that I kind of like.
I mean, yeah, I think there is a very funny juxtaposition of how dark parts of the story get and how, like, coming of age movie parts of it also is, where it's like, oh yeah, kids are underdogs and we're fighting the adults and we're finding ourselves on a fun road trip with the guys, And
killing
and
pillaging
road
on the
trip
way.
is almost getting murdered in a high security prison.
Already on the way there, like, they haven't even made it out of
so
the port of the city, and
yeah,
already dying.
I agree. It is there are books where characters are teenagers where it's more like, where it's more obvious that, like, okay, they're simply teenagers because this is YA. But here it's also utilized better.
Yeah.
Although I will still maintain that, like, I think it could be a better story if it weren't YA. Because quite frankly, like, if you are very limited in how much, like, of the genuine darkness that, like, the topics like organized crime and living in a fucking slum and, like, slavery, sex slavery.
Oh, yeah.
And, like, burning people alive, like, and this kind of persecution. You just kind of, a lot of the book just skates by it. You don't, like, sure, you get the impression, oh yeah, these things are bad and these characters are traumatized, but it's very surface level. And I also think that if we allowed these characters to be older, like 30 or something, or just like 25 even, if, first off, let's be very real here. The fact that they are somehow the best in their fields while being not even 18 is insane. This is literally just not possible.
It's a bit Mary Sue, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is a conceit of the genre anyway that, like, yeah, your crew is, like, the one you're following is, like, made up of a ragtag team of, like, the coolest, the best, and they're, like, that's fine. It's part of the genre. It doesn't bother me while reading it, but if you start thinking about it, you're just like, there's no way there aren't, like, 30-year-old, like, sharpshooters or, like, people who like scale walls. Like, there's no way these people don't get better with age, because you know they do. Like, if you're an adult and you look at this, you're like, there's no way. There's literally no.
Like
but like it's like, it's whatever. But I also just feel like if they were older, their dynamics would be much funnier to witness as well, because these were they were all traumatized as, like, teenagers. So it hasn't been that long. They haven't had time to really, really let the trauma simmer and develop some really fucked up coping mechanisms. You just know that a 30-year-old Cass who has not dealt with anything is even more insane. Like,
that's true,
you just know it. And I also feel like Nina as, like, a competent soldier is more compelling as, like, a woman who actually is, like, an adult and not just...
That's true.
You know, barely in the vicinity of adulthood.
Yeah.
But, like, it's fine as it is. It's not bad, but I also feel like a lot of what it tries to do and is doing could be more effective if you had it for adults with adult characters. But also, it's YA, so it's part of the genre. It's not a point I would count against it. It's like, you know what you're getting into if you're reading YA.
Yeah.
It's more a point I'm holding against people who act like this is so gritty and dark and realistic. And it's like, please, read adult books. I am begging you.
Yeah, I think for YA, it's definitely grittier and darker than your, you know,
it manages, to be more realistic about a lot of things, so it hits harder.
Yeah.
Like, Blood and Ash tries to be edgy, but it's like, it's too stupid, so you're just like, none of this makes sense. You can't take it seriously. But this you can take at face value, so it's like more effective, but it's also still hamstrung by the fact that it has to be age appropriate for a teen audience to read.
I kind of forgot that some of the scenes inside of the book were as graphic as they were. And some of the parts I listened to as an audiobook, and I was out in public in the gym on the treadmill, just, you know, doing my little running exercise, and we come to the part. So Cass's obsession with Inej is also I think something interesting we can talk about, or his love for her, and it's the scene came on where he takes out the eye. Of the one guy. And I forgot about that. And for a short moment, I was like, oh my god. Like, my whole face just kind of dropped. And then I remembered I'm in public. I'm on the treadmill. I don't want people to think I'm getting a heart attack or something while I'm running.
I was about to say, you can't cartoonishly, like, freeze and slide off the treadmill and fall over, you know?
That's not possible.
But yeah, no, it's, that is like the one really graphic scenes, because a lot of the other ones are like a little bit visceral, but not really. Like you have the scene where they find the corpses of like the Grisha who've been burnt at the stake, but they're just like vague. It's like the mention of how like some of the flesh looks and a mention of like the stench or whatever, but it's not very visceral. You don't like, and it doesn't have to be. Again, it's a YA heist book. I don't expect it to like viscerally show me the horrors of war and persecution. It's not what it's trying to do. It doesn't need to do that. But it is very funny that like this one scene is so visceral when most of the book is very held back comparatively.
I felt like it was part of like for show to show how much it impacts Cass, but it's true. There's some scenes that are very graphic, in terms of bones cracking, blood flowing, like especially the Grisha scenes, I feel. But
yeah, that's
then the rest is like pang.
Yeah, it's like that's another thing. There's like, I mean, I guess this could also go in the Jesper part, but there's this one part at the ice court where Jesper has to kill other Grisha with his powers, and afterwards there's a line where he's like, wow, it has changed something in him, and I'm like, dude, you've been killing people for years now. How is this, like, quite frankly, there is no, like, Grisha are also just people. Why would this feel much different from all the killing you've witnessed and done before? Like, you've been in brawls and hurt people viscerally. You haven't just shot people. This isn't news. You can't convince me this is, like, new and impactful. You've killed people up close before. What is this?
I guess it felt different because he had just been starting to kind of reconsider his whole Grisha dom, like his Grisha being, and what it means.
His Gregness.
Should he go with Nina? Should he embrace it more? Does it define him? So I think that kind of plays into it. But I do agree. He's like constantly being described as very trigger happy. And suddenly he's wondering, like, oh my god, I killed someone. I was like, yeah, dude.
There are some scenes that try to get you to like think about murder and like, maybe it's a bad thing. But then you have so many scenes with gratuitous violence that's just kind of happening in the background that you're like, I don't think I'm going to take this seriously. You are a fiction book. Shut up. Don't be sanctimonious. This is not your job.
The amount of times that Nina just straight up like tortures people, and it's always like, oh, she's just taking them down to sleep, but like it's not that fast. Like she cannot lower their heartbeat in in 1 second. So it's like,
God forbid women do anything.
Yeah, I mean that as well.
But like no, yeah, it is like, and especially like Nina is also not particularly concerned with murder, which makes sense. She was a soldier in an army trained to murder people. Fair enough. Like, that she's not super concerned. But also there are moments where, like, Ines gets, like, second thoughts, and I'm like, girl, you kill people all the time. I've seen you kill a bunch of people earlier on Stop it. Don't, like, what is this?
In the Netflix show, they are a bit more sensitive about it. She has like every single person she kills, if she has the time, she does like a little prayer thing because she has such religious connections. But I agree. There's sometimes they have introspection, and other times they don't have that at all. And Kaz especially tries to just not be affected by that, but then in the end he goes, all these lies, and it's like, okay, dude, come on, decide. Are you the ruthless guy, like, or are you not?
Kaz, stop it. This isn't you. Get some help. Get worse again. This is dumb.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, we can talk about her just right now. So what do you think about Inej? The Phantom.
I mean, I like Inej. She's fine. I think she's a solid character. Like, there is a lot about her that's, like, very solid, well written. She's a good complement to everyone else. Like, she's, like, serious, but not that serious. You know, she is, unlike most other people in there, she's like very devout still. She's very, you know, she feels more honest than some of the other people. Like, she's very emotionally honest with the people she interacts with. And, like, obviously she's also competent in all of that. But she definitely is one of the characters where I'm just like, I feel like we are really skirting past the intensity of the trauma that she went through. Like,
yeah,
I
definitely.
think if you're going to put a character who experienced sexual slavery in your story, you should be a little, like, I don't know. It's just like at points I feel like, sure, she's also traumatized and it does get brought up, but also, I mean, I feel like she should probably have more hang-ups. She feels way too, how would you say, she feels very well adjusted for what has happened to her and how she has lived since then, because it's not like she could get therapy or something. Like, it's not like, right, like, there are many times where it feels like, oh no, she needs to be a good person to balance out like Cass and stuff, where it's like, I feel like she should also get to be more angry and irrational at points. I don't know.
I think the thing with Inej is that all the other characters, like Nina has been a child soldier for a very long time, being a Grisha. Yeah. Jasper, he has been in the barrel for a long time as well. Kaz, tragic anyways. And Inej has been there for just 2 years, if we think about it.
Yeah, she has been for a few months in, like, the sex slavery didn't last that long, and then she's spent 2 years, like, you know, killing people, stealing stuff, whatever. And it's like, I feel like for somebody who had a happy childhood before, she should have more issues.
Yeah, right? Because comparatively, she had the happy childhood in a way. Yeah. She should be less, because the things were done to, because in comparison to Jasper, he kind of got himself into a pickle. Inej was kidnapped, was taken, so there was nothing that she did herself, that she threw herself into willingly. So compared to all the others, she should feel the most, I say, shaken by what has happened to her. But yeah, I really like her. Yeah. I love her relationship to Nina. I love the girly friendship, and, you know, the talking, and I love all of her connections to all the others. I mean, at the end of the book, Cass is like, oh, she was the glue that held, like, the group together.
Which I'm also like, I don't think that's true either, Cass.
It's the money.
Okay. But I was like, yeah, Matthias was here for his pardon, and then for Nina likes Inej, but she was also here for political reasons, and for Matthias, Jesper's here because of Willen is here as a hostage. He was not here for Inej at all.
He's not even here for fun. He's just like, it's like this meme from the one movie. It was like, you're getting paid, you know, Willen's just on the side. What do you mean?
Yeah, but really though, it's like, no, Kaz, you just really like Inej.
She was
Inej was here for you, but everyone else was also here because they wanted something else. They just like Inej more than you. Like, that's also family.
But it's just, I really love her relationship to all the other characters as well, because you can see how, because from Kaz's perspective, it's such a loaded thing, and there's so much tension, and the way he describes, like, their interactions. But when you see the others react to Inej, and Inej reacting to them, it's always kind of, oh yeah, it's a girl. It's a phantom girlie.
She's just, like, a genuinely kind person, which sets her apart from everyone else. Because, like, Nina's nice and, like, you know, personable, but she's not really kind.
She's not kind, yeah.
She was raised as a child soldier. Same with Matthias. He's also raised as a child soldier without a choice, really. So he's not that either. Cass, definitely not. Jesper is way too self-absorbed to be genuinely kind with anyone, and Willen's just, like, kind of there. Like, he doesn't know he's also too self-absorbed to, like, really, like, you know, express that much kindness towards other people. He's too busy, like, adjusting to his new life.
He's just confused.
He has other problems, which is fine. But, like, Ines sticks out as somebody who takes the time to be kind to everyone else. And I also really respect that Leigh Bardugo, unlike other authors, and, like, unlike many other authors, was very clear in, like, giving Ines the agency to be like, I'm interested in a relationship, but I'm not going to fix you, and I'm not willing to put up with the way you are now. You have to make an effort, otherwise I'm not interested. Which you do not get a lot at all.
Yeah, the scene on the ship with... The first time I was reading, I was like, oh, girly, please don't. Like, yes, my kind of romantic heart would root for this, but... don't. Just don't. And when she goes, I want you without your armor, I don't want you at all, I was like, yes, exactly.
Very good. Yeah.
There you go. And when they later describe her as being super into, like, the nautical stuff, it was very heavily implied that since he didn't say anything, she was gonna go through with her plan. I was like, yeah, you go, girly. You kill them sliders.
No, it was like... It was very deserved, because she was, like, several times she gave him the chance to, like, you know, do something, say something, anything at all, apologize for all the fucked up shit he said, because he's unpleasant as a person, like, but he doesn't.
I love how he goes, she told me to apologize and that I didn't mean it. What does she mean? Like, there's a multitude of things she could be talking about. Is that the problem?
Cass, could you consider just apologizing for all of them and just hoping she picks the one that, you know, her, like, it's so funny, like, you literally, in your monologue after the scene, were like, yeah, I knew this was going to upset her, but I said it anyway, because I was mad, and it's like,
such teenage behavior.
Which is why you don't have any friends, Cass, because you're unpleasant as a person, which is great. It's like, yes, I love when there's consequences for that. I love when characters suck, and, like, the narrative actually responds to it, because it's like, yeah, people should be mad at you if you fuck up, because you're making their lives worse.
I love how tortured he is about that. He's like, oh, I don't have any friends. It's like, yeah, but you see what you're doing, and, you know...
You're doing it on purpose. You're, like, literally the guy who puts a stick in his bike and is like, why don't I have any friends? Like, right? You're like, who did this? Well, I did, but, like, who did this?
Yeah, he's the queen of self... What's it called?
Sabotage.
Self-sabotage.
Self-sabotage. Yeah, no, he is so deeply dysfunctional, and it's appropriate, because, like, he experienced one of the most traumatic backstories, basically, out of all these characters. So it's like, of course he's dysfunctional. And of course everybody hates him for it, because he's fucking unpleasant to be around.
I really
so
enjoy that this backstory isn't just something that made him go into crime. Like, it wasn't just a setup to be dramatic and sad, but it's something that impacts him throughout the whole book and throughout the whole series, and it's like his driving factor of doing stuff. And I also really enjoy the fact that Pekka Rollins doesn't recognize him, because how could he? He was a small child.
He didn't give a shit.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that Cass is so, like, driven by his hatred for Pekka, and Pekka's like, okay, straight back to business. Don't know who you are. And I love this last POV by Pekka being like, what did I ever do to this kid? And it's like, oh, only if you knew.
Yeah, it's like, wow, this kid fucking hates me. I don't think I've ever seen him before. I don't know him.
Like, what's his problem with me? I'm just a dime line guy. Like, come on.
He's like, it's just business, which he knows because he's in the same business. I'm just better at it. I don't know why he's so mad. It's so funny, especially because afterwards, after he realized that Cass stole literally every valuable of him that he had on him, and he's like, dude, we have to hope that Fun Egg kills him, because otherwise we have to. Because he's like, oh, I hate this fucking child. Because Cass is a, like, annoying little bitch, of course.
I mean, just you read through this whole book, you get their story, and you think, wow, oh my god, and you get to this last chapter, and they get described as the most miserable, pathetic group of teenagers
so
walking into the room.
You're like, yeah, I picked these sad, pathetic kittens out of the kennel earlier. Look at them. They're also all very angry, you know? This one keeps biting me. I don't know.
Like the cat distribution system just put the Six of Crows in Pekka Rowland's office.
Like, but really, it's so funny. Like, it's just every time, like, it's the same when, like, Kaz meets Van Egg. All these adults who have serious power, and, like, all the teenagers are like, wow, Kaz, dirty hands. He's, like, everyone knows him, and the adults are like, well, you're some little guy. I've heard your name, but, like, you're a fucking teenager. You're not important. But, like, do some dirty work for me.
I know that Dirty Hands is connected to him being, you know, the guy for every job, and he doesn't care how bad the job. But putting that into connection with him always wearing gloves, I think it's so funny. It's like, maybe he's called Dirty Hands because he has dirty hands. He's like wearing gloves because
it's so fun. It's like, yeah, he hates washing his hands, and that's why he wears gloves.
They haven't been washed in 20 years, and he's only 17.
But really, it's like, it's so funny. It's also, like, that's also part which I think is important about all the characters, is that the narrative points out, like, from every angle, that all of them kind of suck in their own way.
Oh,
like, they're all kind of pathetic and, like, have a shit ton of problems. And, again, like, not a lot of authors are that willing to really commit to that. A lot of them are like, oh no, look at my main character. She's like, oh, she's so sheltered, but she's still a powerful girl boss. You have to believe me. And here it's like, yeah, these are child soldiers. They have a lot of trauma. They're really bad at interpersonal relationships. They lash out at each other all the time because they're fucked up little guys. It's like, it's...
Yeah, like, I understand. Oh, sorry. I definitely respect Leigh Bardugo saying, I want to get this a little bit more gritty, and I'm gonna make them fucked up, and I'm gonna commit to the bit. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm gonna make readers sit down for a second and not like these characters.
Yeah. So, yeah. You know, you have to look at them and be like, wow, if I met this person, I would not like them. And it's like, yeah, that's the point. Because they all kind of suck.
I think the only person... Well, not the only person, but I think if I met them at the beginning of the book, the only two people I would genuinely like to hang out with would be Nina and Inej, because they seem the most, you know, normal girlies. Maybe Jesper, because he's just a fun dude, but apart from that, I wouldn't want to spend too much time with any of them, because it's like, you're kind of weird.
Like, yeah, which... makes sense. And it's like, yeah, because career criminals are unpleasant people. It's just like that. Yeah,
it do be like that.
I don't know, I really appreciate that for most of them, Leigh Bardugo also didn't pull the, oh yeah, they're hardened criminals, but they have a heart of gold. And it's like, no, they're kind of shitty, selfish people inside. Yeah. That's just how it is.
I love that. I think you kind of have Wylan for that as the, look, this person is so innocent, and kind of the voice of, not the voice of reason, but the voice of the normal person around, like whenever they do something, and he's like, are we really fucking doing that? That's so unhinged. And that's when you kind of get it put into perspective again, like, yeah, it is kind of unhinged.
You're like, wait, you know what? If somebody did that, that would be fucked up. That's true. Well, and you're right.
he's like the standard that you put next to it. It's like, look at it like this.
Like, wait, actually, that is kind of weird. Well, let's move on to more shenanigans.
Yeah, I mean, when they catch the transport of the prisoners, and they kind of just leave the people there. She's like, are we really just leaving them there? And they are like, get in, come on. Jump up.
Like, dude, they would have ended up in a high security prison. This is better than that. Like, they might even make it... Who knows? It's not our problem.
Yeah, like, exactly.
Yeah, straight up, it's not.
So,
but yeah.
Let's get to, I think, my favorite character. Let's talk about Nina.
I love this, that you said this while twirling your hair. It was like, my favorite character, Nina.
I love her. I love Nina so much.
I love her too. She is with Cass. They're my favorite characters. I love them both.
I love her POV on the one hand for her insight into this perspective of Ravka and what it means to be a Grisha that we don't usually get from the others. But she has this certain energy to her that's so refreshing opposed to all the other characters. Because, I mean, she's constantly faced with the dumb shit that she did. I mean, breaking Matthias out of prison first, and then, having a guy who hasn't yet decided whether he wants to kiss or kill you, like, walk next to you for the duration of the travels, is pretty much a reminder of what you fucked up and what you did. But I love her energy so much. I love her banter with everyone. I just can't. I love her so much.
It is fascinating. Like, Nina is like what a lot of authors wish their main character was like. She is competent, she is confident, she is sexy, she knows what she wants. And like, a lot of them like leave it at that, but then you also have these like humanizing scenes where like she also gets to be horrible at singing. She gets to make bad jokes. She gets to, like actually be really committed to a cause and like be kind of shitty to people who don't get it, even though they're kind of in the right. Like, it's like, yeah, why should Jesper fight in the army of a country he's not even a part in? Like, why should he have to? Like, it's not on him.
Yeah.
Like,
I feel like she's a teenager in the best way. And I mean, she also says it in her POV. She says, I'm just a dumb girl. I'm in this horrible situation. I've girl bossed too close to the sun again.
Yeah.
And I love that she recognizes that. She's like, well, I fucked up, or I have these emotions and they suck, but I have them and I have to deal with them now.
Yeah.
And it's just, she's so honest and earnest in the way that she tackles all of these problems.
Yeah, she is...
And she's funny, I think.
Yeah, she is so straightforward with herself because she knows exactly what she wants. She has no problems with, like, figuring out what she wants, like Ines. But her problem is that the things she wants are kind of contradictory. So, that's her problem.
One of my favorite scenes between Nina and Ines is when they're on the ship on their way to Fjerda. And Ines is like talking about what happened while I was under, and Nina's like, oh, Cass ripped into that one guy, like completely destroyed him. There's a thing going on, right? And Ines is like, oh no, he was just protecting an investment. Nina's like, oh, did he say that? And Ines is like, yeah. It's like, asshole. That's one of my favorite
things.
Yeah,
like Nina, I love this. Nina is a Cass hater, and that's why I love her. It's like, because she is right. He's a cunt to her and to everyone else. And, like, even if he ends up being correct or his plans end up working, he just kind of sucks. Like, she's so right to be like, I hate this bitch. I want to fucking punch him. Like, he deserves it. You should do it, Nina. You should.
Yeah, and she's so unapologetic about it, which is just chef's kiss, honestly.
It's so good. Yeah, no, I love her. Though I don't care about Matthias, so that's...
Let's talk about Matthias!
Let's talk about Matthias then. Okay.
So I will not... I know, I will of course accept Matthias' slander, but I will say
it's not slander, it's true.
I don't... You're too smart for me. I love him as a character because he is such, like, he basically grew up in a cult, if we look at it like that. Like, they saw a child, parents, whole village killed by Grisha, traumatized, took that child and said, we can make a soldier out of that. And somebody who, like, is completely dependent on us, and will believe everything we tell him because he's so desperate for somebody to, like, take the lead. And then it's talking about POVs, I think his POV is my favorite, simply because he is so intense in the way that he describes things, in the way that he thinks. He's constantly like so tormented between like the emotions, happiness, desire, but I'm also religious. It's just such a fun back and forth in the way that he thinks, and you see an issue from other point of views and you're like, oh yeah, that's a bad thing, and it switches to Matthias and he's so like he's like mulling that over in his head, is like still thinking about it. So in terms of like writing, his POV is actually my favorite. But I can't say I like him.
I will say his POV is also one of the most useful as like outsider POVs.
Yeah, useful like, as well.
Let's be very real. Willan doesn't get a lot of POV, if at all. I think he has like one or two.
I don't think he gets any in this book.
Yeah, maybe he doesn't even get any. That's possible. I didn't keep track of that. But like, he's so useful because he does have a certain amount of like read on everyone. And like, he sees a lot of stuff that none of the others remark on because they like know each other already. So they don't think about it anymore.
Yes, not new.
Yeah, so I do like his POV, I just don't really... I don't care about his character archetype. I just find it kind of annoying. Like, unfortunately, like, religious struggle is always kind of... Especially in a YA book, it's just, like, not very interesting to me. And especially, like, his form of deconversion is, like... I understand. It is realistic that if you are in a hate group, that if you then build a very intense personal relationship with somebody that group hates, that through that you learn that these people aren't all bad and that, you know, you learn to like them. But I personally find it extremely disgusting to go there. Like, it is on a personal level offensive to me that you're only able to see the humanity in people because you wanted to fuck one of them. Because, like, a lot of Matthias's journey comes from the fact that he's attracted to Nina. It doesn't, like... a whole chunk of it, because of course there's also the fact that they save each other and they have to work together, but all of his memories of that are tinged with the fact that he definitely wants to fuck her so badly. Like, and that's like the off-putting part to me. Like, it would be different if like that wasn't such a huge chunk of it, but it's such an important part to his perception of it. And like, when he gets thrown in jail, he's not like, oh, Nina's an asshole. He's like, oh no, all Grisha are duplicitous, evil snakes who can't be trusted. And even, like, when he's like, yeah, I'm going to help you, he's still like, well, but the other ones are, like, too dangerous to leave alive. Like, I don't trust these people. And it's like, I just find it unpleasant to read. Like, I just find it unpleasant on a personal level. I'm like, I understand why he's like this, and I get, like, it's also that this arc is very predictable in how it goes, because it's a YA book, so you know where he comes out. He's not gonna end up, like, with a complicated opinion. He's gonna have the right opinion at the end that, like, Grisha are people, and you should probably not hunt them for sport. Like, it's not a hard place to arrive at, but...
I personally,
it's not the same, and I'm very clear that you cannot compare fantasy oppression to real life oppression.
Yeah.
But it is a lesser form of it, but it has the same flavor as like a white nationalist from like a white nationalist like hate group like becoming less racist because he like fell in love with like a woman of color and they had sex and he's like, wow, actually maybe I don't like, maybe they're not all bad, you know? It's just I don't like it. I understand it as a storytelling device. Just personally, it's just, I don't like it. So I also don't really care that much about him.
I think for what I like, that's something that I especially genuinely like about this thing. It's he doesn't change his mind because at the like center of his heart he's such a good person, or because he's so selfless and realizes, oh my god, everything I was brought up is wrong. It's a very selfish reason for why he starts to change his mind, is because, you know, like...
Yeah, it also it makes more sense like that. It is extremely realistic for it to happen that way. I just personally find it off-putting. Like, I can just, like... It is unthinkable to me that I could ever put up with somebody who, like, hated what I was on such a fundamental level that he thought I deserved to be persecuted and murdered for it. And then later he's like, oh, well... I had sex with somebody else from your group, and I'm really in love with them, so now I think it's okay. And I'd be like, okay, but, like, when you break up, you're, like, right back to that, right? Like, it's just, like, it's... Like, if you just...
Something I also wondered about with Matthias is, I mean, what it as it appears to us, because that's what we get told by him and, like, told by the others, is that he wasn't aware that Grisha didn't get, like, a fair trial.
Which is stupid. I don't believe.
Because it's such a fun, interesting thing in his head. He knows that they have committed, like, a primal sin against Earth, against Gel, because
they're unnatural.
They're unnatural, they have this power, and they have to atone for that. So he captures them and he takes them to the tribunal, right? Where they're gonna get their trial. And that's all something that makes sense in his head, right? And when he gets confronted with the fact that, you know, they do, in the end, get killed, their trial always ends in them being killed or tortured, or, what he didn't know, being used in experiments. But this last thing in his head is by the way, they don't just disappear into thin air after the trial, they get killed. I thought that was such an interesting, like epiphany for him to go, oh shit, oh yeah.
It's real strong. I was just following orders energy. And it's good that he, like, realizes that. And I think it's well written. It's a very valid, like, character arc. It's a good thing that it happens. And it's also, like, he's a compelling character in that the way he deals with it is fairly realistic for how unrealistic the situation is. And, like, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm just like, I don't.
That's completely okay. I've seen people...
it's just like, we all have things where we're just like, I don't like seeing this. Even though there's nothing technically wrong with it, you're just like, ugh, I don't like this.
Yeah, there's in the way of both Matthias and Kaz kind of obsessing over their respective love interests, there is a sexual tint to the way Matthias sees Tina.
Yeah.
Nina. That Kaz doesn't really have with Inej. That does give it, like, a very different flavor. But on the other way around, Inej also isn't as sexually flirty as Nina is. Though with Nina, it's like, she flirts with everyone and everything, which is explicitly mentioned, that she even flirted with a waffle once. So, take from that what you will, you know?
It is. Yeah, I mean, there is also the aspect where I'm like, you know, Nina is flirty and sexually promiscuous, and she's the only non-thin character that we have, you know? There's a lot of, like, commentary on her body, and it's like, you know, everyone can take away from that what they will. I personally don't really care. But it does stick out that, like, she's the only one who's like this. Because, like, Jesper isn't really flirting in the same way. Like, he's just, like... He just likes making jokes, mostly. And he likes positive attention.
I feel like he's, like, needling. He likes to kind of elicit a response, but not necessarily flirting.
Flirting is a lot less overtly, like, sexualized by the narrative. And, like, Kaz is insanely repressed. Again, I don't know if he knows how sex works other than, like, he knows the theoretical aspects. Because, like, he hates touching people, so
he can draw you the charts, you know.
Yeah, he's like, well, technically. And he's also like, well, I know how long it takes all important people to nut, because I have, like, the deets on all of them. I know the secrets, you know? I know this guy has erectile dysfunction, but, like, it's like, you know, it's not... And, like, also, like, it makes sense, because, like, Inish also has, like, a lot of trauma around that and isn't really interested. For them, it's a lot more like, wow, he's very important to me, like, he's an important part of my life, and from him it's more like, she's so good, she's too good for me, but also, like, I still want that for me, even though I don't deserve it, you know? For him, she's kind of like it's... like, Inish and Nina are like the Madonna whore complex, you know? Inish is the Madonna, and like, Nina is, you know, it's...
I would see that, like, I think Matthias also has a Madonna whore complex.
Oh, no, like, certainly.
Where he's like on the one hand, he's like, oh, like, women are to be, like, respected and talk a certain way and, like, do this and do that. And then you have the Truskelle, you know, the witches who are beguiling and sexy and kind of those kind of women.
It's so funny too, because, like, Nina will just be like, I'm cold as fuck, I can't keep my freezing clothes on, I'm wrapped in, like, this stinking old fur, I'm just trying to be warm, and he's like, she's seducing me with her sexy body, she got naked so I would be hard. Like, it's like, so it would be too hard to want to kill her. It's like, dude, she's just cold. It's good survival tactics. You're stupid.
Such a sexually repressed dude. Yeah. One gripe I have with the Matthias tribunal thing is, did they really think they could pull the Clark Kent disguise, just changing his hair and eye color and just going in there? Because he has trained with these people for a very long time, right? And I mean, at the tribunal itself, he's been there for, what did they say, 4 months? Yeah. But it's, from the description, it's obvious that they just kind of go there to do guard duty and stuff. So it's not really far-fetched that people would recognize him even with a different hair color.
Yeah, although I also feel like a lot of that also plays just into the fact that when you don't expect someone and you aren't looking for someone, you wouldn't necessarily recognize them. Like, because then you'd just be, oh, this guy reminds me of Matthias, but Matthias died a year ago, so it doesn't matter.
Maybe.
And, like, he's a prisoner anyway, and Matthias wouldn't be, you know, picked up as a prisoner. Because Matthias is a good person, you know, like...
it's like disguising somebody as... But still, I felt like, come on,
it is very
serious?
Funny still. It's like, well, this can't be Matthias, because he has brown eyes now. His face is the same, but that doesn't matter.
I mean, okay, like, really dark brown eyes do change faces completely if they had, like, or the other way around, if somebody had brown eyes and then they get blue eyes. But still, I was like kind of the first time I read it. I thought,
agree. It's a little silly, but you know,
it's still a little fantasy book.
They should have given him real blackface. I mean, that really people wouldn't have recognized it. Like, it's just like, well, I mean, practically speaking, it's not like it's like a meaningful thing in their world, you know? It's like, technically speaking, if you really want to, like, just, like, dye his skin a darker color, that's, like, extremely, like, different. You just need to use a kind of paint that, like, doesn't wash off in, like, the prison showers, whatever. Like, but it's, like, it's not... It's part of the story where it's also like, okay, it's part of a heist. There are so many unbelievable things already happening. The fact that these people are all teenagers is, like, more egregious than the fact that, like, nobody recognizes it. It's fun. It's not a big deal.
So, but, wait, we talked about Kaz, Inish, Nina, Matthias. We still have Jesper and Wylan.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Jesper, as a character, at first I didn't like his POVs for the fact that I thought he wasn't bringing anything else to the table in terms of, because at first I was like, oh, he sounds like such, like the first time reading it, he sounds like such an interesting dude. And then we get to his first POV, and it's a lot of exposition on the Crow Club and like the gambling and blah blah. And it's like, okay, what more do you have for me, Jasper? Come on, give me something more. And I did like the way that he just doesn't understand why Kaz does things, and like his disappointment in Kaz and himself and the whole overall situation. Why things are happening, and other people seem to be knowing about these things, but Jasper doesn't, and like this back and forth until we come to the point where we get to know why Kaz doesn't tell Jasper anything anymore, because he kind of fucked up the whole heist by telling one of the Dime Lions that, you know, he's gonna get some money soon. But apart from that, I thought finding out that Jasper was a fabricator was gonna make it more spicy in terms of conflict. But they didn't really go that far with it, which I thought was, come on, could have gone a bit further.
I think the thing is, like, Jasper's POV was necessary because we needed somebody to be out there with Willen at the gate and stuff, and like it was part of the heist and it was necessary to have a POV there. But it's also that Jasper just doesn't have that, like, he doesn't have as strong a voice as all the others, because he just legitimately doesn't have goals much. He's just like, I'm a gambling addict, which means I'm in the red everywhere, which means I need money. But that's not, you know, he's not focused on anything. He just needs more money so he can gamble more. Like, he's not, right? So it's like, he's just some guy. Like, he's a sharpshooter. That's cool. It's like fun for him, but there's not that much else to him. Like, one of the
things I liked in Crooked Kingdom was that we get a little bit more of Jasper, especially like his relationship to his father and the motivations there. But I feel like that could have also easily been already mentioned in Six of Crows. Give him a bit more motivation as to why it's kind of important to get the money back than just, oh well, you know, my gambling and kind of my father thinks I'm studying. I think give us a little bit more drive to Jasper would have been nice. Because I genuinely did enjoy his banter with other people. It's like, damn, Jasper, stop being so funny. But wasn't giving much.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think that legitimately, like, Jasper's flaws are good flaws for a character to have. Like, he is extremely unreliable and he's extremely unperceptive of the consequences of his actions, and he doesn't really take the blame. And again, he has a gambling addiction, which is, you know, a debilitating conditions if you live somewhere where gambling is par for the course, and you can't, like,
it's
you
like
see it every day.
At his workplace, there's gambling.
It's like, no, those are all good problems for a character to have. The problem is just they don't make him an engaging narrator. Right? It's good that he adds problems to the whole heist. That's good. But I think that's also why everyone else is a more engaging POV. Because, like, Inesh wants something. Nina definitely wants something. Matthias wants something. And Kaz wants something. But Jasper doesn't want that much. And Jasper doesn't have a lot of personal problems with anyone else either. And he doesn't have, like, an extreme, like, experience that colors the way he sees the world.
Yeah.
He's just kind of along for the ride. So it's just not as engaging. Again, like, what happens, like, it is kind of like in real life, it would be horrifying to experience, you know, destitution because you have a gambling addiction and you need to keep borrowing money from people you know will, like, you know, take a baseball bat to your kneecaps, or, like, it will, you know, throw your father out of his farm because you gave it to the fucking bank as a loan, to get a loan. Like, this is horrifying. And having to join a gang and to have to become violent and kill people. These are horrible things, but Jesper doesn't experience them as that horrible.
Yeah.
He's not affected by that much. He doesn't care. Again, he was already, like, at the frontier killing people. Like, he's not... This doesn't...
He's very aloof about all of it.
Yeah.
It feels like it hasn't really hit him yet. And I also didn't really understand... I think it was to kind of set them up as like, partners later on in the second book, but I didn't really understand his vitriol towards Wylan. He's so... I feel like Wylan didn't do anything wrong, and Jesper's immediately from the beginning, he's so annoyed by Wylan, and so, like, combative to what Wylan does, and it's like, dude, why? Just leave the poor kid alone.
Yeah, I mean, in part, I assume it's, like, jealousy, because it's like, Wylan has money. He doesn't have to worry, you know? He could go back home whenever he wants to. His father sends him letters that say he can come home and they can, you know, everything will be fine. Yeah, this kid just ran away from home and I guess he maybe sees himself in that, but it's like, it's not explored. And it's also like, you know, everyone's mean to Wylan too, because, like, again, he doesn't know anything because he's not a career criminal like everyone else.
I also love how they all agree on not wanting to take him with them. And Cass is like, no, we're taking him. Sorry, you guys don't have a say in here. And like, can we not take the other guy, please?
Yeah, there's also such a funny line from Cass to Wylan where he's like, yeah, you're passable at demolition. You're excellent at hostage. Which is like, he is so funny, but he's also such an ass.
Cass... getting back to Cass again, but I had completely forgotten how much he slays in the destruction department.
He is so funny. He reads people so well, so he exploits all of their weaknesses all the time. He has the best comebacks. The problem is just if you actually say those things to people, they don't like you, because you're being really, really shitty.
You will get hit in the face, potentially, if you decide to come up to somebody and tell them that, you know, you fucking suck. But
yeah, I mean, there's the scene where they're at the prison and, like, Nina's like, wait, Matthias isn't fighting in the ring, right? And Cass like, well, we didn't come here for the ambiance. And it's like, Cass! You could have just said, well, he does.
He's so annoyed all the time. Also, his comebacks... he also gets flustered if people push back. I don't remember in which context it was, but at one point Nina is like, well, if with hair like that, no wonder why you're XYZ. And he's like...
Yeah. And he's like self-consciously...
Like, what do you mean?
Goes to his hair, but he's like, well, with enough money, I can pay for the best hair I want.
But I love this
He's still like, yeah, self-consciously goes through his hair.
I love this snippet of he's just like, oh, what do you mean? My hair. But
yeah, no, it's so funny.
I did really like the ending for Wylan where he's like, give me the money. I told you my dad would blow me up if he had a chance.
Yeah, no,
it was like one character moment where I was like, this kid is kind of
such
fun.
a good, like, there's so many good setups in the whole book where it's like good foreshadowing where you're later like, ha ha, damn, haha, you got us. Because, like, I also remember that, like, before Cass sees Fanek, right before that, like, there are, like, he talks about how easy it is to con someone. You just need, like, a few things. And, like, then he immediately gets conned. It's so funny. There's also, like, the foreshadowing where they, like, talk about the letters Wylan gets and what's in them. And if you know... the reveal, you're already like, damn, I didn't remember that. That's fucked up.
Like, if you can read this, you know, I'm happy to see you come home.
Yeah,
like,
it's like,
damn.
When you're reading this, no, I love you, and you can come home, like, and I'm proud of you, and it's like, damn. Ouch.
I also love because in the beginning, his reason for not, like, or running away from home is said to be that he, you know, fumbled with a teacher, or that there was something
had a like incident with an ambassador or somewhere, whatever, like,
rutting his leg, you know, like there's like super inconsequential stuff in theory, And when it comes to it, it's such a basic thing that people, of course, are ashamed of.
It's also that, like, I mean, you find that out in the second book, but it's also that his father literally tried to kill him for it. And he was like, well, maybe I shouldn't go back home.
Well, yeah, that too. I mean, which makes the whole bet with Cass even funnier.
Yeah.
Because Wyland's like, I know my dad tried to kill me.
Happened.
I can get some easy bucks out of this guy.
Yeah, he was like, I'm winning this one. Yeah. It's so good. That's it really fun. Is just like, yeah.
So I think Wyland shines as a character, of course, in the second book, because that's where he actually gets a POV.
Yeah. Because, like, Van Eck is the antagonist in the second book, so then he's way more important.
What did you think about the ending of the book, with the whole kidnapping of Inej and everything?
No, I think the ending's super effective. It's good. Like, it's good that they all, like, fail. It's very effective. It's, like, I mean, it is set up from the very beginning. Like, from the first time, you have Cass who's super confident that he's like, well, yeah, I was scammed once, but never again.
It's not gonna happen.
And he mentions that so many times that now he knows it. And he makes so many comments of, like, these stupid pigeons who let themselves get ripped off because they're too dumb to pay attention to the important things. And it's like, of course it happens. Of course it does. It's so good.
I love how he goes, oh, all of this vengeance and energy and all of it for nothing. Yeah. All the money is gone. I didn't avenge Jordy. Nothing. Inej is gone.
Yeah.
Fucking stupid. I'm fucking stupid. And I just...
Yeah, it's so good because he's been confident the entire time. It was necessary that he fuck up. Like, it's so important. And it's also so good to get the reveal that it was Jesper's fault.
Honestly, because it's like, from Jesper's perspective, you're constantly, like, wondering, is Cass just being an asshole?
Does Cass just not trust me? Yeah.
Because he has been portrayed to be an asshole, so Cass not really telling Jesper is kind of on brand. And then...
Yeah, and, like...
Yeah, go on.
I was about to say, there's also this fucking amazing parallel, because at the beginning, you have Big Bolliger who betrays them, and when they're leaving him there to bleed out, Jesper's the one who, like, looks back and thinks about helping him, and Cass like, dude, leave him. Like, and then right at the end of the book, Jesper's in the same position. Like, it's, and especially at the beginning, he actually says, like, ugh, why did you do that? Like, why were you such a fool? Why would you do that? And it's like, well, Jesper, I have news for you. You're about to understand this really well.
And I also love how Jesper doesn't get it. Like, he doesn't get it that what he did was so tremendously, like, damning for the whole group. Because he's constantly like, yeah, but I just said this thing. I didn't expect. It's like, how did you not expect people to carry up the information throughout the ranks? If somebody from a different gang comes along and goes like, oh my god, we're landed this huge deal, gonna have money soon. And there's this certain, like a child being scolded, you know? He's like, no, I didn't do it. It's just really trying to get away from the responsibility of what he did.
I think that's also why Jesper's just, like, not that compelling, because he's, like, actively avoiding taking the blame for anything, while everyone else is, like, deeply aware of how they fucked up.
Yeah.
And, like, what's wrong with them. Like, you can say a lot about, like, Kaz, but he knows exactly what he's doing. And he's like, yeah, I do this on purpose. But Jesper's just like, no, I'm just a poor little guy. How could you be mean to me? I didn't mean to. It's not my fault. And it's like, well, Jesper, Kaz literally told you one thing to do, and you didn't do it. It's like...
And it's so... For me, it was so hard. Like, okay, not so heartbreaking, but heartbreaking in a sense of reading that scene. Because you are wondering together with Jesper throughout the book, like, what's Kaz's problem? And then you find out and you're like, I'm sorry, guy, I can't root for you right now. You fucked up.
Yeah, it's especially him, like, having to grapple with the fact that, like, if he hadn't done that, Inej might, like, wouldn't have gotten
She might still be here.
Yeah. Like
Nina might not have needed to be taken the Yorda Palem. There's so many things that kind of got screwed through to the fact that Pekka Rollins went there too. And I mean, in the end, Pekka goes like, oh, you know, we were also being contracted by Van Eck to go after it. But he wouldn't have taken up on that thing if he didn't know from other sources, Jesper, that it's actually quite a lucrative deal.
Yeah.
You know, he wouldn't have gone, oh yeah, I will do this thing for this guy. But he was like, oh yeah, there's some merit behind it.
And like, even if he had, like, it was like a huge problem that, you know, Inej was like stabbed and almost died. Like, it did complicate things a lot.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, it's just like, damn, yeah.
Jasper was really fucked like, up with that one.
Jasper, you're literally the source of all of your problems. You can't keep blaming everyone else for it. I'm sorry.
Which is so interesting because I mean each of them has like a theme for what they're like, what kind of demons they're battling.
Yeah.
And for most of them, something happened to them by others, or there's a certain amount of like kind of fate that brought them to that point.
Yeah.
Except for Jasper. He truly is the
Jasper just kind of sucks. It's true. Yeah.
And it's like, and I'm reading his POVs and he's being so like sweet and funny and like kind of not understanding what goes on, and you're like the moment they're like going back into the port and Kaz is kind of keeping an eye on him, and Jasper notices that other people from the crew are keeping an eye on Jasper, and Jasper's like, oh, probably so I don't jump off the ship and like immediately spend my money in the next casino. And it's like, they're probably watching you because they want to see whether you're running off to the Dime Lions or to another gang, because Kaz can't trust you right now. Which also, again, like kind of undermines the aloofness of him.
Yeah, it's like, maybe you could stand to be a little less aloof. I think it might be good for you.
That was one thing I liked about the second book. It deals a lot more about Jesper and his problems there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, for sure. There's like Jesper. But yeah, I mean, he is like a fan favorite, but I don't get it because I don't really like Jesper that much.
I do get it. I just think there's, for me, other characters I relate more to or that I'm more fascinated by.
Yeah, I mean, it's also just because like Jasper and Willen get together in the second book. And people
I think there's
romance.
also a shipping aspect to it.
Yeah, where it's like, oh, he's bisexual. And it's like, yeah, but is he interesting? No. Like,
but is he interesting? Honestly, I mean, this doesn't happen in the first book, but the whole like confusing Kuwait for Wylan and kissing him and it being a huge thing was such a weird plot to me. When I first read.
It was so unnecessary. Like, we did not need this. It's literally like, why.
Little guy was such a piece of shit. You know, just, Kuwait was like, you saved me from the ice court, and like, there's nothing, like, I don't really have to thank you because I didn't ask you to do it. You did it, kinda. It didn't kill me. Thank you very much. But I'm gonna be a menace to all of you.
He was like, you know, my life was horrible, and I might die pretty soon, or be sold to slavery, but like, I'm gonna shoot my shot.
Yeah.
It's like,
he's like, hey, what's the worst could happen?
I think we're gonna get to that in the second book, but I also think like it's very strange when the second book tries to get you to act like Kuwait is like part of
the crows,
like of the six. Like it's like it's not. He's just kind of there, like.
Yeah, definitely.
He can help, but he's not really like it's very like. I think the second book is definitely less good than the first one.
Which is so interesting because I was scrolling through Goodreads and like looking at a couple of 5-star, 4-star, 3-star, 2-star, 1-star reviews, and one of the 3 stars, I think, was that, oh, you know, it's the second book is definitely better, but the first one is a good base. And I thought, is it though? Like, is it better than the first book?
The heist is way better executed as like one of those like stories, like as a heist story. It's like way more engaging than the big con story in the second book. The second book is way more convoluted and has like parts where I'm like, it has the whole fan service part with like Nikolai, Zoya, and Genya where I'm like, did we need this? Like on second read in Six of Crows, it's like, okay, there's a lot of name dropping, but it's natural in a way where you like, if you didn't read the Grisha trilogy, you don't feel, this doesn't feel weird. It's just like information about the world, and you're like, oh, cool, good to know that these people are. Yeah. But in the second book, like, the scenes with them feel so fan servicey. I was like, when I was reading it the first time, I was already like, who are these? Why do these people get so much attention? Like,
I had no idea what was going on, and like now looking back to it during this reread, I was like, oh, there's a lot of name dropping of characters I should know because I read the trilogy now, but I didn't read it back then. And I remember how confused I was about this Stormhaunt pirate guy in the second book. Yeah,
I was just like, this feels gratuitous and unnecessary for the story.
It's like, not,
there's so much attention given to it where I was like, this feels unnecessary.
It's not Cassandra Clare kind of foreshadowing the next book level with the amount that she did in the 6 books of Mortal Instruments. But it's still kind of...
it feels extremely gratuitous. It's like, hey, you remember these guys from the Grisha trilogy? Didn't you love them? And I'm like, they were fine, but like, they don't belong here because this story is not about them. Like, I don't know these people.
One thing that was like a lot of fun to me, because I remember it so like vividly, was that since Shadow and Six of Crows treats Alina in the way that the official ending is of the Shadow and Bone books, which is she's dead. She died during the last battle. I thought that she is dead, and I remember talking to you about the Shadow and Bone books, and I just started reading it, and I was like, well, but I mean, I know that she dies at the end of book 3 because of Six of Crows, and you were like, yeah, I know, right? And then when I actually read the books, I was like, oh, she's not dead. And I remembered that.
Yeah, officially she's dead, yeah. Sure.
And I remembered that when I read Six of Crows again. I was like, remember that time where you thought Alina was just dead?
I do. What's funny is that I feel like Six of Crows was more definitive about her age than the Grisha trilogy was. When I read them, I was like, is she like 18? I don't remember. Like, when I was reading it, I was like, how old is she even? I don't even know. I think she's like late teenagers, probably barely an adult, whatever. And then the Six of Crows book is like, died before she reached the age of 18. And I was like, wait, what? Really? That's crazy.
She was just a little girl.
This makes the Darkling even more pathetic, because it's like, girl.
It's like underage.
That's not even the thing. It's like, what did you even see in a teenager? Because, like, at first he's just trying to use her, but later he's, like, genuinely into her. And I'm like, dude, what even has she... Like, she's, like, 17... How could you possibly be interested? It's kind of pathetic, my man.
It is. It is, especially even, considering how old he actually is.
Yeah, how old he actually is. I'm like, dude, what? What do you even get out of, like, a teenager? There's no way she's interesting enough to actually, like, dude, you're so desperate. Like, you need to have more sex on the side. I don't know what to tell you. Like, it's...
I mean, it's the same with all the other kind of weird, old fantasy dude romancing a teenager. With Alina, I feel like it's even more prevalent, because it's similar to what you said earlier, where in some books people just have a certain age to make it appropriate for the readers. With Alina, it felt like because she behaved childishly, she behaved very juvenile in certain situations, and like a teenager would. So it was a lot more noticeable that this dude in his mid to late 20s is kind of hitting up this teenager. And
it's
there
kind
was this
of mid to late 500s, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Still the shadow daddy.
No, it's...
But yeah.
It's just, like, no, but yeah, no. In this book, I wasn't bothered by it. I felt like it was fine.
Yeah. The name dropping was like, ooh, this thing was made by Jenya Safin. And I liked the smart... I can't talk. The small Zoya parts of Nina, like talking about her teachings and stuff. It felt organic. Because there's these little name drops of characters you don't know in the other backstories as well. So
it was it was the name drop felt the same as when Matthias was talking about Jabrum, where it was like, okay, they're just talking about their respective mentors, and like the story explicitly like parallels them, and oh, he's the boogeyman for us, and Zoya is like the boogeyman for a lot of Droskela, so it's like, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's one of the parts where I feel like the second book is weaker. The second book, generally, it's just harder to write an ending, generally, to a story. And, like, the second book is way more convoluted, I feel. Looking back, I remember reading the second one and being like, the first one was better. Like, immediately after.
Totally. I did remember correctly when reading Six of Crows was how much I hated the prologue. How much I hated the start of the story. And I remember that back then I was like, is this really the book I want to start my new reading endeavors with? Because it drags out so much. And it's like this...
That's true, yeah.
You could have really shortened the prologue to the essential dude walks around, gets called in, sees the Grisha, sees the Yurda Parim, and, you could have made that a lot shorter, but no, he talks about his girlfriend that he's in love with, and it's like, it's a very, the pacing is off.
It's interesting, because, like, first time I read it, I thought this part was also kind of boring. I was like, I don't care about this guy. Now reading it a second time, I'm like, because I know what's gonna happen, I'm like, actually, this is not that bad. But I'm also on the side of, like, I don't necessarily think it was necessary at all.
Yeah.
I am actually, like, structurally, I can see both sides of the argument of being like, no, this POV helps in this and this and this way. But I also feel like it actually takes away some, because you have Cass who, like, thinks, like, the Grisha are ghosts first because they're doing things that shouldn't be possible. And then he gets, like, walked around the house where it happens and then learns about, like, afterwards what happened in detail, and they're like, well, we don't know exactly what happened because nobody,
it's not a mystery.
There was just a little boy who came out, but he didn't, like, know everything. And it's like, I think actually the effect would be stronger if we didn't know what happened. If we weren't actually aware of what happened. Then, like, Cass would be standing there like, what the fuck? Hello?
It would be a much, like, I'd say impactful, like, transition, because Nina also goes, she didn't really believe that Yurda Parim can make you do XYZ things, and then she sees it for the first time when they're in Fjerda.
Yeah,
and that's, like, such a,
I feel like
it makes it hit harder.
Yeah, I feel like that chapter doesn't really do that much, except, like, introduce you to Yurda Parim, but we also get that later anyway, so it's...
Especially if you read this for the first time, you're not really familiar with the Grisha verse. I know it's not the intended, like, chronological order,
but these are totally readable by themselves. And, like, they don't tell you should read the other books first.
Exactly.
It's just like, there are other books by this author, and you're like, okay, cool.
Yeah, they're kind of in the same universe, whatever, but there's no... it's not like, oh my god, it's a Court of Silver Flames, it's a different character, but you should definitely have read the other books.
And it's also like, the audience for a fantasy heist story does not have, like, an entire overlap with the kind of people who want to read the Grisha trilogy.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
it's very different.
The Venn diagram overlaps heavily, but there are also a lot of people who are like, no, I love the Grisha trilogy, but I find Six of Crows super uninteresting. There are people who are like, oh, I love Six of Crows, but the Grisha trilogy is like garbage.
Yeah.
I don't care about this.
So
yeah, I agree. It's like, it's not good enough to really add much, and it takes away some parts. But I'm like, I think if you started the book with Ines and like her watching Cass like walk into an ambush is like way more interesting.
Yeah. Ooh. And then you
like,
could
right?
do like
because like it starts with like the worry of, hey, something's gonna definitely go wrong, but we all have to pretend it's not going to. Yay.
That's I also have to say that I also didn't like. I know it's to set up the characters a little bit and to have like that start of, oh, Cass is like a bad motherfucker, and we have Big Wallinger who kind of, you know, the treason and all that. But I also remember not being very enticed by that chapter. I remember the first 2 chapters were hard for me when I first read this book, and the second time I was like, well, I know it gets better, but kind of, yeah, I don't know why. I
think the second chapter is much stronger than the first.
It yes, I totally agree. I totally agree with that.
Yeah, I think I feel like when you read it, you have to be okay with not immediately like remembering the names. You just have to be like, okay, I read this name, but I don't have to remember it. Like, you're just like, okay, they're talking about people, and you get the vague impressions of what it means. You shouldn't go into it being like, oh, I need to remember all of them. And it's like, no, the important ones will crop up later. You don't need to remember all of this.
Yeah. I think for me, like, Six of Crows is not a book that has huge pacing issues, at least for me. But I feel like the beginning could have been a bit more. I just the scene of Cass getting ambushed after you've seen him just being so cool. That's fun. That's super fun because you're like,
yeah, but it's less fun if you don't see him be cool first.
I know. There's always needs to be exposition, obviously, because you don't know what's going on otherwise. Yeah. But coming out of this grating prologue,
I think
it makes it.
The prologue doesn't help, yeah.
Yeah, I
then
genuinely
you're like,
think
wait, now it's completely different people who are doing completely different stuff, yeah.
What you said, just take the prologue out.
Yeah, I really think it doesn't add that much.
And start with Cass being cool and then immediately getting like punched in an alley.
Like, honestly, the only thing that really pays off from the prologue is that you have like this one guy falling over from exhaustion and he's dead now, and you like recognize it's the guy who was trying to grow in his mustache, who was the point of view character from the intro. And like you have people being like, wow, this shouldn't be possible, but in the intro, in the prologue, you already have people being like, oh, this shouldn't be possible, how is she doing it? And it's like,
but yeah, and again, it's if you don't know what Grisha are supposed to be doing, it's like, okay, I guess it shouldn't be possible.
Yeah, it's way more effective for Cass to be like, wait, is this a ghost?
Yeah.
Than, like,
he's like, this what?
And it's also more effective to hear like the people look at the aftermath, and like it's a creepy visual to be like, this room is empty, but all these people are standing at attention. They're empty. You can't. They will never react to anything. They will just die slowly. Like, that's fucking disturbing. You look at that and you're like, oh, that's not good.
And I feel like I like that we're agreeing on this one, because it's the one thing that kind of bothered me about the whole set. I was like, oh, so annoying. So I mean, now we talked a lot about the characters. Rip it open. I know you want to talk about the world building.
So
and the Gregs.
I will. Yeah, the Greg. I cannot get over the fact that like Grisha is just a nickname for Grigori in like Russian, or Gregor or whatever. So if you translate that to English, they're just called like Gregs. Like it's just funny. Like it's like there is lore reasons, but I understand that everyone who speaks Russian or knows Russian naming conventions looked at that and was like, this is the dumbest shit I've ever seen. Like I understand, especially like it's not cool. It sounds cool in English, but it's not. I mean, I guess some of the like Dutch words are also supposed to sound cool in English, but when you read them, you're like, haha, this is just a normal street name or whatever. You're like,
it's like a random J somewhere. Just to make
like,
it...
well, but yeah, the world building. I think let's preface this. I don't think any of the issues I'm going to talk about with the world building really take away from the story, because the world building isn't really important to the heist. The parts that really are important to the heist is first of the setup in Ketterdam, which I think Ketterdam is done much better than the rest of the world.
Yeah.
It is much more intricate, and it feels cohesive, and it makes sense, and it makes sense with the characters who come from it. And, like, the Ice Court is like, yeah, we'll get to it. But, like, none of these things really take away from, like, a heist story, because, like, the heist is the important part, and the character interactions are the important part. So you're like, I can forgive the world building that's just at, like, I wrote it down, like, at first glance, you're like, yeah, it's fine, it's whatever, interesting. At second glance, you're like, wait,
it makes less sense.
And on third glance, you're like, what the fuck? None of this makes any sense.
You know, I don't go past the first glance.
Yeah, and I think again, like, this is the power of a well-written story. If you are a good writer, people aren't going to look at your world building that closely. Like, the world building is still better than something like From Blood and Ash or whatever, but if your writing is already...
I mean, that's hardly a challenge.
Yeah, no, it's like, if your writing is already, like, not great, it's so much easier to see the flaws, because you're not distracted by all the cool character dynamics going on.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah. Again, it doesn't really take away from the reading experience. Some of it is just very funny to me. Because, like, there's so much. Okay, my first point of contention with the Grisha, I understand completely that this is a leftover problem from the Grisha trilogy, which is whatever. It's not, this video is not about them, right?
It's not about, yeah.
Yeah.
We did talk about that, but then we disagreed, right? We were like, no, Six of Crows.
I was like, I'm not reading these books again, dude. Good, because they're just not that good.
Yeah, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
But yeah, the Grisha are ultimately not, like, super powerful, but they have really useful powers that are really, like, and you don't have to give them anything extra for it, right? They're just naturally occurring in them. They can just do that shit. You don't have to give them extra food. You don't need any rare materials. They are an insanely useful thing for any society they live in. And, like, the Grishaverse as it is right now feels like somebody, Leigh Bardugo, presumably, looked at a historical period and was like, oh, cool, I like these aesthetics, I like the vibes here. What if we now added witches to it, or people with superpowers, right? But that doesn't work, because unfortunately, if you are building a fantasy world and you have, not like everyone have magical powers, but have them be common enough that everybody knows somebody who does. Like, even if it's 1 out of 100, then every village has one, right? Like, it's not that rare. So, like, everyone knows these powers exist, and you have to think back, like, 1,000 years ago, without technology, without, like, any excess production. Do you know how insanely useful that is? Imagine when you live in a time with no vaccines and no real doctors, and somebody can heal people. That is insanely positive.
Yeah,
like, even if you're like, okay, but some people would, like, discriminate against them because they would think they're unnatural or whatever. Sure, but any society who didn't do that, who valued it, would have such insane material benefits just from them like being there and helping them, that they would immediately have the power to build a much more influential society and take over all the places that don't, you know, like these people.
Yeah.
And like, not even their powers. You also know that the Grisha perceive the world on a different level, so there is a much faster and more effective scientific insight into the world that you can apply and use without even having Grisha powers. They can help you develop technology and like processing of whatever much faster than in our world where magic isn't real and no one can do that. So again, any society that treated them positively would make leaps and bounds in progress while all these other people are like, you know, lagging behind. And they wouldn't make it, because that's just not how historically any society has been built. Like, think of this. You have a tide maker or whatever, and like, he can prevent droughts, or he can prevent like your corn rotting in the field because there was too much rain. He can just take the water out. Like, you just have like insane material benefits. So anyone who persecutes them would have to already live in an area that is extremely rich in resources, which I have news for people who don't live in the north of or the very south of the planet, but those areas typically not rich in resources. It's typically not really a thing. And like, this is a general problem I have. I also talked about this in Serpent and Dove. If you take a fantasy setting, and like, I understand the mental process of being like, I like witches, and I also like the dynamic of having like a witch and a witch hunter. I think that's cool. You can do a lot with this. And you can, but you can't just throw that into a world. You need to think about, wait, witch hunting in our world only really caught on and was like done because people materially benefited off of hunting witches. Like, people got either rewards, they got social influence, or they even got like land from people they ratted out as witches. Like, we know the Catholic Church just like took all the land and shit people had that they accused as witches and burned at the stake. And like, if these witches actually had magic powers and killed a bunch of people while you were trying to exterminate them, I don't think people would go around killing witches as much, because it costs you a lot of resources, but you don't get anything out of it except having no magical people to support your society anymore, which is also bad. So like, already I feel like the idea that like most of the world's countries are negatively inclined towards Grisha makes no sense at all. Like, and I understand why the world is set up as it is. You have like the one country that is technically in support but drafts all of them immediately into an army as soldiers. You have the country that really, really hates them and persecutes them and kills them. You have the country that doesn't support them and doesn't hate them but like experiments on them or whatever because like, ooh, they're like interesting. And then you have a country that's just like hyper-capitalist and that's like, well, you're useful tools, so we will sell you into slavery, but, you know, we don't hate you, but we treat you just like everyone else as a cog in the machine that we can sell. However, this doesn't really make sense. Again. Yeah. You'd have to think about, like, if you look even at our world historically, most societies in almost all places, historically especially, revered even just imaginary, magical, or extraordinary abilities. And this isn't even just, like, wise women and wise men in, like, more, like, in, like, little villages or whatever. This is also just straight up the Christian church, like, was also, like, look at miracles and saints. These are all things that would be considered magical things that probably didn't happen. But, like, they thought these things were good and that they were a sign of, like, God's favor. So the idea that around the Grisha world there aren't mostly countries that have some sort of religious, like, association with this kind of magic that is, again, demonstrably useful is crazy.
Yeah, you haven't read King of Scars, right? But the saints in Ravka have actually been Grisha, which gets revealed in King of Scars. So it's like, but it's not like, oh my god, we have these Grisha saints. It's, we have these saints.
Again, yeah.
And they actually were Grisha.
Which does feel more like, hey, I looked at our history and I saw like, hey, Christians had saints. Haha, what if these saints had actual magic? But forgetting the fact that before the establishment of the Christian church, these magic people would have already existed, so it wouldn't have felt special to people when somebody could do magic, because around the world you know this exists and people can do it already. So like in Six of Crows you also have the part where Nina is like, oh yeah, if you want to find Grisha, you just need to follow like folklore and stories, and it's like, but doesn't everyone know Grisha exist? Like they're not that rare. They're like, if not in every village, then every second village. Like they're not, again, like people wouldn't be surprised that somebody can do magic. It's like saying like, it's like imagining in our world that like red-headed people were like a myth, and people were like, wow, I heard there's places where people have red hair. Isn't that crazy? But that's just a story, you know? Like, and people would be like, I don't believe that. Because, like, they make up less than 1% of the world population, but we know they exist. Everyone knows people with red hair. Like, it's not...
Yeah, but that's... I totally agree with that. That's one thing that I didn't really get. I also already didn't get that in Shadow and Bone.
Yeah.
There's this constant... Like, okay, even in the beginning of Shadow and Bone, the Second Army wasn't that small, but it was a very prestigious thing in the sense of, oh my god, you're in a little palace, you know, you got drafted, and oh my god.
Yeah.
And then at the end of Shadow and Bone, it's like, shit, Second Army decimated because the people who went with the Darkling, dead. People who didn't go with the Darkling, also dead. So we have like, I don't know, 50 people left, maybe. And then that's why they send out all the agents and people into different countries to try to snatch the Grisha that they find and bring them back to Ravka, like kind of more or less kidnapping them, convincing them. But like... at the same time, Cass just goes, you know, the shoes, does Inesh say it? Like, the shoes of Inesh just, you know, made by a fabricator. Oh, the cane made by a local fabricator. And it's like...
It's not that rare.
Is it normal to have a local fabricator like that?
Like,
that's just
again,
a bit weird.
Like, Katadam is like a trading hub, so there's, I guess, more diversity there, and there's a lot of rich people who might own a fabricator as like an indenture, but it's still like, okay, so it's not that rare still. Like, you find...
Imagine all the Grisha enemies that they come across throughout the book. It's like, oh my god, they have two, what's the English name? They have two air dudes.
Was the Squalor? No, wait, these were
the Squalor is the air dude, right? Yeah. It's like, oh my god, they have two Squalors, or an Inferni. It's like, are these Pokemon? Where do you get all of that?
Yeah, it's there. That's also the part where it's like, but also like being like, oh no, we only have like 50 Grisha soldiers left. But it's like, you know, I mean, I'll get to this more when we're talking about the map. But like, from this map, I cannot tell how big these countries are.
Yeah,
and like
true.
Having any standing army at all is really expensive. So they weren't that like common or big either way. And like legitimately, like nowadays you're like, oh yeah, thousands of soldiers, whatever, but like this was not common. Like armies were not that big because not that many people were alive back then. Like you have to look at like the population of the earth like quadrupled since the beginning of like the 19th century or something. Like it expanded so massively. It's insane. You cannot like the numbers just feel entirely like too small from your current like modern perspective.
Yeah.
But like people died all the time. Child mortality was over 40%. Over 40% of people died before they reached the age of 18. It was fucking crazy. People died all the time. They died younger. There just wasn't that much food. There wasn't much of like everything. It's really difficult to like contextualize that if you're just like writing from vibes, but like it was really really different, and everything was much 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 smaller.
Yeah. I mean, there's a thing, I think, was it in King of Scars, where they're already talking about the fact that Ravka now has an army that's far too small to kind of keep up a country of that size, especially because since now that there's this huge vacuum, because this huge part of the army is gone, both Fjerda and the Shu are kind of looking at Ravka going, scrumptious, you know, that's even...
But like... That's also like a thing where I look at this again. We're talking about the map. It's not, we're talking about Grisha. So like again, it's kind of weird to treat them like folklore because like everyone would know someone. Like again, it's rare, but it's not that rare, and it's been around forever. Like everyone, it's not a new thing. It's not like 1 in a million people who has like weird powers that like. Just explode out of them, and everyone's like, I've never seen this before. No, everyone would be like, oh yeah, that happened to Timothy, you know, like, you know,
he's one of the greats.
Yeah, it really is like, and I feel like again, like the way it's set up with the countries is like a cheap way to show how they are treated differently.
Yeah.
Like even if everyone was like historically like, oh yeah, Grisha exists, these people exist, and they can be useful, you'd have like different countries who first of like have preferential treatment for different orders. You can totally imagine like a seafaring nation that puts like a lot of value on squallers and tide makers, and like is like, oh yeah, if their gods are like based on the water or whatever, they're like, oh, these are amazing, and like healers are always useful. You would never, no society ever would look down on a healer ever. But, like, maybe these people would be like, no, Inferni are evil, because, like, we believe that the water is good, but, like...
It's like the holy
Inferni
thing,
are, like, the inversion, they're, like, the price we have to pay for, like, the good guys who can help us with, like, whatever we want. And, like, they would hate those guys. But then you might have places that, like, revere, like, heartrending, because they're, like, oh, killing people is, like, an incredible power, because it puts like, you such closer to the ultimate, like, thing. Like, death is, like... extremely powerful to us, and we don't think it's bad, but it happens to everyone. So being able to wield that power is like impressive and cool, and they'd be like, yeah, these other people, whatever, they wouldn't teach people healing necessary because they don't find it as important as like killing. Like and you could have societies where it's like, sure, they're revered, but they're put into like schools or like monasteries where they have to learn. They're taken from their families and they don't really get a choice, and they get indoctrinated. You could have a super interesting interplay of different states who treat it very differently, and like still don't treat the Grisha necessarily well, but they like the idea that anyone goes around killing them is like kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Like that's
regarding the Grisha, the two things that I didn't really get in terms of the position of countries towards Grisha is with the Shu. It's being said that they kind of are in awe of what Grisha can do. It's like, oh my god, fascinating, godlike people, fantasy creatures, we bow down. But then at the same time, they just pick them apart and torture them
it's like...
It's such a weird oppositional, like, okay, you love them so much, you kind of pick apart their organs.
It also, like, it feels... inaccurate because like the Shu are obviously like inspired by Eastern, like by China, basically, like they're Chinese people, fantasy Chinese people, and it's like if you look historically like at Chinese folklore and stuff, they don't think miraculous powers are evil or whatever. They think that this is like just a part of nature, that these are powerful spirits or whatever who take human form and like can like the idea that they would like dissect them, that would almost be like you wouldn't, like, it would feel wrong.
You like, wouldn't dissect a deity in your
you wouldn't
in
do
your
that.
world.
That's fucked up. Who would do that? And it feels a little like, I mean, I'm not well read on this. I'm not an expert, but I have seen people be like, feels a little bit racist, because like the idea that like Chinese people are clinical and cold and like they're interested in scientific progress, but they don't have like the heart for like the mystical thing. And it's like, I feel like that's not accurate to China, but I'm also not well read enough on anti-Chinese American racism to know how that fits in there. Let's just put it like that.
That was
it does feel a little weird.
That was number one I didn't get. It's like, you can't tell me these people love Grisha and love their power and like are fascinated, and because they're so fascinated they try to replicate it and torture these people. And the second,
if you revered them, like, why would these people be obsessed with getting more of the Yoda harem? Because it's like, but it kills them. Like, it kills them. It like it's horrible for them. Why would you want that? If you think these people are great, then you'd be like, okay, they can do more shit when they take it, but then they're immediately dead. So I think that's bad.
and the second thing was the tribunal is built by fabricators. And you could think in the beginning, oh, maybe these were like tortured people, right? Fjerda kind of, the Fjerdans had some sort of leverage on them that made them build that prison. But then 2 sentences later, it's like, because there are Grisha that are not like belonging to any country, organization, they're kind of free roaming, and those would probably be up to do the job for the right amount of money. But then that wouldn't make sense, because
the Fjerdans wouldn't pay them. They'd kill them.
The Fjerdans wouldn't pay them. The Fjerdans would abduct them and kill them. And that was one thing I couldn't wrap my head around, is how was that prison building, how was that whole thing built?
I mean, it was also implied that like the Fjerdans believe that it was like magically built by God, by Djel or whatever, which means it's so old that they don't actually have records of it. And then it was like, oh, maybe it was from a time when they didn't hate Grisha yet. And it's like, but why would they start? Like, legitimately, why would an entire country start if they were so useful, right? Like, that doesn't compute.
The Fjerdans should love Inferni. It's like a little bit of heat.
Yeah, that's the thing where I was also like, Fjerda makes no fucking sense as a country at all.
Let's go.
On any level. Like, again, we've talked about this, but for those who may not know, in the far north, it's very cold. It's very cold a long time of the year. Not a lot of like sunlight year round. Harvests not as good as in the south. Many don't know this, but you get way less resources when you're in the north. It's harder to farm. It's kind of shit, but you know, you can still live there if you make an effort. But this is also historically why a lot of countries haven't bothered going to war over territory that's super far north or super far south, because it just kind of sucks. Like, you don't need to fight for that territory because no one wants to live there anyway. The only reason you would fight over that now, today, is because we have use for natural gas and oil.
And the resources,
And this is also the only reason Norway is a very powerful, rich state today. Back a few hundred years ago, they were not rich. They were one of the poorer Scandinavian nations. They, like, many people may not have heard this, but there was a thing called the Vikings, and they went out into the UK, northern France, places around them, and stole shit from like Christian monasteries and like little towns. Because they didn't have to, like, they stole gold and valuables and
raiding
like, food
and
and stuff. Raiding. That was a job you could have because there was so little shit up there that you had to go steal it, and it was the most convenient way. Now, if you have a look at the map of the Grishaverse, you may notice that the UK does not exist. There is nothing around Fjerda except the land connection to Ravka. not a lot of places to steal shit from. So, one of my major questions is, where the fuck would they get wealth from? Now, maybe they're a colonial power, but again, building boats is really expensive. Building, like, sails were extremely expensive because you need real good cloth for that. And, let's be very real, the next place over, Navizem, is, like, over the ocean, which, again, I don't know how far that is, because there are no, like, there's no explanation on the map how big anything is. As far as we know, this is, like, a tiny fraction of the of the whole world where all this
can
happens.
Just do guesswork as, like, how long do the characters take, for example, to go from Cash to home, kind of.
Yeah, it's like, but again, that, like, it's like, I don't know the country, like, but again, Fjerda, I don't know where they get wealth from, which first of is like, okay, the witch hunting is very resource intensive. They sail all over the world to kidnap people to bring home to kill, which I don't know about you, but I don't think that brings you much wealth. I think that's a huge waster of energy, time, resources, everything.
Yeah, I mean, you have to feed, feed the guys. Like the super soldiers that you send out.
If I were a Fjerdan peasant, I would revolt immediately. What is this system? What the fuck is this? None of this helps.
Why do the buff teenagers get the best fish while I slave on my little field?
Yeah, it's like I harvest like 3 grams of wheat. I'm starving. What are we doing? Why are we sending people all over the world? Never mind the political ramifications of sending death squads into foreign countries. I feel like those would probably be not very happy about that, and you'd get a lot of problems very soon. Like, I don't know how Fjerdans feel about diplomacy, but I feel like that they should probably look into that, because I don't feel people are very happy if you send, like, their people into their countries to just abduct and kill random people. I feel like that might be unpopular. I don't know, though. I'm not a politician, but it's just a guess.
I'm trying to look through the wiki article of Fjerda, and I love how it says Fjerda is well known for their heavy advancement in technology, like engines that power wagons and tanks, steel aircrafts, that comes later, that works without Grisha squalors, all on the span of 1 year. And then, without the Grisha squalors, without Grisha, next sentence, it is suspected by Ravka that fabricators under Yoda Parem had a hand in their achievements. It's like, so they did use Grisha, apparently. Probably, most likely.
The thing about that is, though, that, like, the world building's very vague on the technological state of the world. The impression I've gotten is that it's not industrialized or actively industrializing. I haven't seen any combustion engines. I haven't heard anyone talking about mining coal or iron for production purposes. I haven't really heard anything about large factory buildings. I haven't heard about, like, smog or, like, tenements or anything. Yeah. The impression I'm getting is that it's not industrialized, which opens the question of what the fuck is going on with the Fjerdan technology. We have talked about how there's somewhere no way in between that these people have any money, because, again, the part of the world they live in sucks in terms of natural resources. Everyone else hates them because they go around killing their people at random. Their nearest neighbor fights with them all the time. So, like, where are they? Like, even if we accept that they have the knowledge to produce this, where the fuck are they getting the iron necessary to build all these tanks and flying machines and shit? Where are you getting this? Where is it from? Do you know how much work went into mining the resources to build anything?
That stuff, yeah.
Do you know how insane the idea is that a world would invent tanks before they invent the fucking train? Can you imagine? Like, what is happening?
I tried to find some answers on this on the Grishaverse subreddit, and one of the questions is, how do the Driscolla get away with kidnapping foreigners and executing them for something that isn't even a crime in other countries?
How do they do it? It is just generally like everything about like Fjerda gets sillier and sillier the longer you think about it. You're like, wait, how do they do that? Where did they get the resources? How did they even get the idea to build this? What is happening? Question mark. It's like Fjerda is like the longer you think of it, the more question marks arise. And I feel like this is also a good time to talk about the map, which also gets funnier.
Talk. You've been okay. I'm gonna get out the map again.
First up, again, this is not. I have no idea how big any country is. I don't know, and the impression I get is that Ravka's pretty big, and that Shuhan is pretty big, and that Fjerda is also pretty big. This doesn't really jive with my experience of European politics and politics basically everywhere except after the colonization of the Americas, because naturally states don't become that huge, and it's a little strange that these different countries with the implication though is that they're pretty big because we know the climate changes pretty intensely between them, so they have to be big. But it's also what? Because look at the Wandering Isle. It must be cold as shit up there. Who's living there? Question mark.
The gingers.
They're all cold all the time. Who's living there?
I mean, with Shuhan and Ravka, it's okay, there's mountains in between. Trying to go over them and keep one sliver behind the mountains. Okay.
It makes sense as a natural border. No complaints here. Mm-hmm. But also it's Ravka's placement is a little strange.
Yeah.
It's I understand. It's I guess what I meant to say about the map is that it feels like Leigh Bardugo looked at Europe and then was you know what? Let's just take out Western Europe and the Mediterranean and Africa and shove that somewhere else. So it's all cut off where Russia is, and Russia has a border to northern states, and that is true. They have a border to Finland, and hey, Russia has a border to China, which is true. They do have that. So let's just put those there, and let's add some funky Dutch people on a little island who do trading. Yeah, that's good. Question, why are the people on the island white people when the island has a land bridge to Shuhan? Question mark.
But is it? I don't know what it's submerged though, right?
Yeah, it's submerged, but if a land bridge existed there, and if it's this
you mean
close
in terms of
to the coast of Shuhan, shouldn't people living on this island be also of the Shu ethnicity, or have been, and then later decided they want to be their own country, which is fine. That makes sense that the island nation decided, hey, you know what? We can do our own thing. But why are they not Shu? Visually.
Yeah. I mean, I think you could try to go with it's the traveling merchant kind of melting pot thing that happens.
That's true,
but there would be a lot of traveling merchants that have to be there, because Kaz and his brother came from outside of Kerch, from the farmers, and they are white boys.
Also, the names don't remind me of the names of the Shuhan people we meet. All of those have names that don't sound this Dutch. Let's just say it's just very funny. And then when you're done on this side, you look to the other side and you're okay, there's no Vietnam, whatever, cool. Which I still don't really know what is going on there.
Like, they have the Yorda fields.
Yeah, they have brown people ? Like, legitimately, I'm like, what? Like, it feels like they're like being exploited in like from like the nations on the other side of the ocean, but it's very far away for that. Yeah. And then we also, even funnier, have the southern colonies, which never get explained at all. They get
it's
mentioned.
Like, and where are the northern colonies, you know? If you say you have southern...
Like, whose colonies are they, though? Like, Nina doesn't talk about them as if they belong to Ravka. They don't seem to be Fjerdan colonies. They don't seem to be Kersh colonies either, and they don't seem to be colonies of the Shuani. Who's owning those? Who colonized there? And why are they just called the southern colonies and not like New Kerch or whatever? Like, why are they all just, what is happening over there? Pointing vaguely over the map.
I mean, considering the point with Novye Zem is quite far away.
Yeah.
And maybe like too far away to be like discriminated against. I don't think that's really merit. I mean,
yeah,
European countries went to
but the thing is
Africa,
that, like,
and that's that continent is still struggling with that.
And like, but the thing is also, Africa's pretty close to Europe. Like, they didn't have a far journey, especially to northern Africa, which was colonized first. So they built a lot of wealth off of that colonization, and then took the rest, built canals, went to China, whatever. A lot happened there. So, but there's nothing close to these European... Where is all that wealth of the, like, Rafkin royal family coming from? Where is it? I don't know.
That's true.
Whose colonies are these? The longer you look at the map, the funnier it gets, because you're like, wait, what?
I mean, in King of Scars and Rule of Wolves, especially in Rule of Wolves, I haven't finished that, by the way, so if I say something stupid right now that people say, but that was mentioned in the book, I didn't finish it, okay? Still salty about Nina. There is Fjerdan royalty as well. Like, all of Fjerda is governed by one royal family that also seems to have a lot of wealth, which in that story is tied to their war machines that they have. But that, again, makes you question, how do all of these countries have so much generational wealth? And like, where does it come from?
Where's that wealth coming from? Because, like, the funniest bit is also that this map is entirely missing the places that were very wealthy before Europe started colonization. Like, where's the Ottoman Empire? They were very wealthy people. Like, they were much, much wealthier than anyone in Western Europe at the time. Where are they? Also, like, it's just like, the Shu people, like, there is a very, like, important part of history that concerns China, which also concerns countries that are not here anymore. So I'm like, what happened there exactly? Because there's also, like, the Yorda has, like, it feels... Okay, no, I need to start this differently.
That's okay.
The wealth of the Netherlands comes from trading and also colonization. But a lot of that wealth also comes from profiting of the imperialism that happened in China at the time, supported by both the Portuguese and the English, who were also there at the time.
You are so smart.
Are there... Like, did they have the equivalent of opium wars here? Is like...
It's like the Yorda wars?
Like, are the Shu really mad at the... But it's also like... This kind of money only came in because they could plant and, like, they could, like, get tea from India and, like, from China and, like... take a lot of Chinese shit and just like sell it in Europe for extremely high prices because people were interested in it. And that's where their wealth came from. But like, who are they selling it to if Western Europe isn't present? Like, where's the Dutch wealth coming from if there's no one to sell it to? If you don't have the French and the Germans and the English who are like, oh yeah, I love stuff from the Occident. I love silk. Yeah. I love tea. I love porcelain. We don't have that here. We need it from... Where's the silk from? Where's the wealth coming from?
Especially if you consider that during Shadow and Bone, the Kerch were already rich, right? It's not a thing that happened in the last 5 years or something. But Ravka wasn't really a party that could trade because they had the huge fucking shadow wall in the middle of their country. And it's also mentioned in the Shadow and Bone books that is a huge issue, that you have West and East Ravka, and like getting resources across is a huge problem. And then in King of Scars, it's mentioned that it's now a huge problem because the East Ravkans don't really identify much with the West Ravkans. Yeah. You have this gigantic patch of land that you cannot farm on or do anything on. It's just a wasteland. The Shu are kind of eyeing Ravka. The Fjerdans are very much eyeing Ravka and like starting to advance south to get a little bit of warmer country for themselves. And it's like, okay, who is trading with the Kerch? Where are they going with their boats? There only is Novye Zem and
the southern colonies, question mark, whatever's happening there.
I honestly, maybe the southern colonies are like the Yorda Parim, the Yorda fields.
Yeah, I don't know, but it's so funny, especially because it's also mentioned in the book that outside of Kerch there's this island where people come to trade slaves because it's technically illegal on Kerch. But it also mentions that people are coming there from all over the world to buy slaves. I don't know how Leigh Bardugo thinks slavery works, but usually it's very localized, and like it worked in the transatlantic slave trade because you brought a lot of slaves on your boat over to America at once and you took shit care of them, so it wasn't as expensive. Imagine you live across the ocean and you travel all the way to Kerch to what? Buy only 2 slaves? That's insanely expensive. Who's paying this much for slaves? You're better off just catching some poor people off the street where you live. Like, what kind of slavery system is this? Far be it from me to criticize an ineffective slavery system, but like, what? Who did this? Why are they doing it like this?
I know that it's supposed to kind of show off how ruthless... I'm trying to find the name of the fucking island. Velgeluk.
Yeah.
How like it's supposed to show off that even if it's illegal to own slaves, you can easily do that in Kerch. There's just like loopholes around it. But I feel like that makes the whole justice system of Kerch just look like a joke.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you can like get somebody into jail by just saying, oh, dude's been a slave trader, and having like the coin or the little emblem that Nina can show to go like, hey, he is. But at the same time, Inej would not be able to go to court and say, I was kidnapped and had to like sign this contract that I can show you right here, without like I was forced to do it. I'm forced to work as a sex slave in this establishment, and the court would go, oh no, can do, sorry.
Yeah, it's like
that's a perfectly valid contract.
Like there is obviously like a legal distinction between indentured and like slavery. And
that's true.
It also was meaningful in Europe to a certain degree, because the truth, like, it is true that you can buy yourself out of an indentured, but you can literally never stop becoming a slave. Like, you couldn't. And there were different rules. But it's also, like, very strange, because the reason slavery was outlawed in Europe was because the church found it distasteful. So they did indentured instead. They thought, they just thought it was like, Pope said, I don't like this. It's not great. It's a bad look. Let's not do this anymore. And so they didn't do it anymore. Like, Indenture is barely different. It's not much better, but it is not slavery. It is different, but it's also like,
it's like
why
modern
would the
slavery.
Church forbid slavery? They're not Christian. They their main god is the god of commerce and wealth. Why would he care about slavery? Slavery was insanely normal all across the world. Like, it's one of the oldest institutions. Since people invented the idea of owning something, they also came up with the idea of owning people and selling them. Like, it's not like a new idea or a rare thing to happen. So it's odd that they wouldn't do that. And it's also odd that anyone would think much of it, because technically probably all of those countries still would have slavery going on.
It's especially odd considering that they're like, apparently the Church morals aren't really that high if they have this huge, not like a little bit of an underbelly of the city. They have a whole ass, like 50% of the city is basically gang territory. And the Church police is like, oh, well, starvation, rape, whatever. It happens there. I mean, but we draw a line.
Always the case, because they were like, we don't really want to police that. We're just gonna have the crime bosses pay us and they can police it, because we don't care. But it's also like, why would they care about slavery? Like, why would they?
Exactly. Why would they?
They love owning stuff. Why wouldn't they want to also own people? Like, I don't get it. It's very random as an idea. Yeah. It's like, yes, it is based on the fact that the Dutch did not allow slavery, but this was in part because it wasn't allowed in Europe generally, and that has many historical reasons and predecessors which would not be present here because no one's fucking Christian. Because the Roman Empire never existed, and Greece also never existed, which are all fun things to think about. It's just
I do not fault, or I do not begrudge Leigh Bardugo for not going, like, making that.
Oh no, I absolutely
thinking about
don't
that.
Either. Yeah,
but it is like it is interesting that she decided to go, oh, well, these countries just all are powerful because they are ancient, they are super old, and they've like grown to power at some point. But yeah, it's interesting choice.
It's like, again, the thing is, as I've said at the beginning of this, the world building issues don't really take away from the story because the story is not about that, but it's also that the care that was put into Ketterdam as a setting really throws into sharp contrast that the rest of the world seems so nothing, right? If you make, especially like the second book, there's a lot of like legal playing around as part of the big con that they're running, where it's then like, okay, but if like legal stuff matters, why do the Fjordans get to do whatever they do in other countries again? Does no other country have like legal concern? like what is happening? And again, I don't really need every author to put like insane amounts of work into their world. It's totally fine because a lot of stories don't need it. Like, if you look at our world today, you don't need to understand that the Roman Empire existed and had an insanely wide-reaching influence on Europe, which then influenced the rest of the world to explain certain things existing. You just need to, leave enough out for that explanation to be possible. That, like, somebody could, like, put it together if they wanted to play archaeology or whatever. You don't need to know these things. You just need to build a society that's internally consistent, kind of, and makes sense in the way it exists at the time. And, well, the map of the Grishaverse is not that, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like she could have branched out a little bit more, but then again, and that would probably be something that I would complain about as a reader, it would give us a lot more exposition and like stuff where you're thinking, why is she telling me all of this? I don't care and I don't need to know. You know, if she went on like how much all of the other countries kind of developed and all of that.
No, like again, it's not necessary. Just while you're in the country, you need to have things happen where it's like makes sense for them to have. Like, again, I was not angry or upset at seeing a tank in Fjerda. I thought it was very funny, and I think it's still very silly, but it is also hilarious. So I'm not mad about it. It's just like if you start thinking about that tank, you start to think about a lot of other stuff. It's a vicious spiral.
One thing that I maybe, is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of the world building?
I feel like we've hit on basically everything. Yeah.
If you would be up for that, I would like to talk about the heist a little bit. So I genuinely enjoyed like the main idea of it, like trying to get in like that, and then the typical, well, they're not gonna look at people going out, gonna look at people going in, all of that being very fun. I got upset with Cass when he just goes off willy-nilly and changes the plan just because he wants to, just because he goes, oh no, Pekka Rollins could be here, but he doesn't tell people why. And I understand that he tries to keep like stuff short and concise and all of that, but a simple, guys, we already need to go. Nina and I need to look for this because Pekka Rollins could also be here, and that's just a loose end. I don't want to be able to like keep talking or anything like that. A simple thing. No, he just runs off. He doesn't even tell Nina. She then is the reason why the alarm goes off, because the gun goes off, and then he has the audacity to still be like, well, what's the problem? Go. It's like,
I mean,
sir.
That's why no one likes him.
I was so annoyed. I was like, dude.
Yeah, that's true. That's like, the heist is like, I mean, if you are familiar with heist stories, you know that whatever the plan is going to go wrong in 20 ways, and then at the end they're still gonna make it somehow. What I think is unusual, but that's because it's the first part of a series, is that the heist doesn't work out in the end. Because like at the end, like basically they failed their mission.
They've been conned.
That's not typical. But I also think that like, I think the tank is funny, but I also feel like it's lazy. A little bit.
It is.
It's because we already, right, like, I feel like the tank is unnecessary because we have Nina who has to take the Yurda anyway. So, you know, you could have just have her take it earlier and then, like, have them, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like...
Yeah. No, I you could have, maybe they walk... I mean, having her take the Yurda Param at the prison would be difficult because then she would have to, like, level the whole place in order to get away. But you could have easily made it that they're trying to get to the city, and then they have a situation where they had some guards stationed inside the city, they had some guards coming out from the prison, and then there's a situation where like, oh my god, no, I have to take the Param, and then you have the gruesome walk down to the boat where it's like, you see all these dead people that she just annihilated, and they have to walk through that, and then she's like starting to get like more weird and stuff. But the tank wasn't really necessary in that sense. But yeah.
Yeah, it's just I mean, it works as it is. Like, again, it's not bad. Yeah. But I do think some of it, I feel like there's a lot less sneaking around than I thought
would expect.
Would be.
Yeah.
Which I suppose isn't that bad, but I also feel like a little robbed because I wish there had been more.
I love the beginning of the heist. You know, them being... From the moment that they step onto the prisoner transportation, because you get a bit of background on Kaz, and it's like a very interesting situation of him being like stripped of his agency in that way and going through that traumatizing backstory, and you as a reader experiencing it, and then boom, go out of the wagon and immediately think, oh no, things are going wrong. They're checking the papers, but Kaz was right. You know, laziness wins. They get out. They're in the cell. You have the thing with the ammonia bomb. It's fun. It's all fun. And then they do the climbing up the what's it in English? The chute?
Yeah.
The thing.
Yeah.
Super fun. And Inej and Nina will have to kind of disguise as the girlies, you know, like try to get in. And that's all of that is so fun. But then in the end, Nina is the only person walking around that party.
Yeah.
Trying
that's
to
also a thing.
Like, okay, it's sort of a situation where like, oh my god, they don't manage and they don't manage. And you don't know what Kaz and Matthias are doing until you get to the POV and you find out, they're walking over the bridge and then they're putting the uniforms on and all of that. But in the end, it's still Nina being the only person, again, walking around, because she also already had to do that in the village. She had to find out where to intercept the prisoner transport. Walking around trying to find out where Kuwai or Yor was. It's like, okay, that was your grand idea? Having a girl walk around being in the compromising position where as soon as she's gonna interact with somebody, there's a high chance, because she's dressed like somebody from the brothel.
I was about to say, she's...
There's a high chance that she's going to get to talk to one, maybe two people, because at some point they're gonna be like, all right, let's disappear. You know, this is what you're here for, this is your job. And having a concubine walk around a party that doesn't really let people hit is kind of...
Suspicious,
Suspicious, yeah.
I also feel like I kind of feel a bit robbed that, like, Inej doesn't do any sneaking around. She's there to scale the chute of the furnace, but other than that, she doesn't really do that much.
The Phantom doesn't Phantom.
Yeah, the Wraith doesn't.
She's called the Phantom and das Phantom in the German one. The Rave. The Rave isn't raving.
Yeah, but like I feel like that was a missed opportunity. Mm-hmm. And I'm also like, understand, it's the rule of writing is like, it's fine if unrealistic stuff happens, if it inconveniences your characters, like that's fine, like nobody is like that mad about it, but I'm still like unlike when unrealistic stuff or unexplained stuff just saves your characters, you know, people are like fine with getting more problems magically, but like solving them needs to take effort. But like the fact that Jarl Broom immediately recognizes Nina is insane. And quite frankly, I don't believe it. I also don't understand why this was necessary, because right after she entered the party, she drops that one guy with Grisha powers because he's like annoying her. He could have just seen that and immediately been suspicious, because he's a paranoid guy who's there to like kill Grisha. So he's immediately like, suspicious. But he's like, no, I immediately recognized her. And I'm like, dude, nobody would. Like, literally, this is nonsense. This would not happen.
It's like this guy apparently has a photographic... I mean, he says, I made it my life's mission to know every single drusier that comes across...
Where the fuck would you get images of them?
Exactly. Like, he would need to have a photographic memory of this girl he saw a year ago who was
also,
like looked completely different, because puberty do be existing.
And she was like dirty in a cage, and now she's wearing like makeup, and
she's extremely dolled up. Okay, yeah, she has a different hair color. That's the same thing as the Matthias thing.
Yeah, but if you don't know someone well, that does also add extremely to it.
And it's like and the fact that he would immediately also suspect her to be her there. Like, he looks at her and doesn't go, she looks kind of familiar, or I've seen this person somewhere, but he looks at her and he goes immediately, bitch didn't die a year ago.
And like, I get that like they wanted the drama with Matthias and stuff, but also I'm like, quite frankly, like, why the fuck did they leave him alive? Like, they just
I don't get it.
No,
she made him bald. That's the only thing she did.
Yeah, I'm like, no shade, Matthias, but like, this guy should die. Like, you agree because you were like, well, even if I believe in killing Grisha, what he's doing is like definitely inappropriate, because like he's using Grisha for that's not right. And like, is he really the person where you want to start showing mercy? Like, this is literally just self-defense. Like, he would kill you the moment he wakes up. This isn't... Like, this is not so ethically defensible. I don't understand. It's stupid. Not...
Jarl Broom is never gonna go, oh my god, thank you, Nina Zanuck, that you spared me in that moment of vulnerability. Yeah. I will not hunt you. This guy is gonna be even more determined to kill Nina and go after her. So
it's crazy that they didn't kill him. It legitimately, I'm just like, why didn't they do that?
It genuinely, I understand her maybe not killing the other Drizkella.
Yeah, killing the one where she was like, where Matthias was like, they're horrible, just hateful boys. Monsters, but they're also just boys.
Yeah, but I'm also
like, in that moment, I was also like, okay. Technically, you were correct, but they are also literally aiming a weapon at you right now. This is the most defensible time to kill someone. Yeah. And, like, yes, the narrative is like, no, it was the right decision, because look how they came in handy right, like, afterwards, because she didn't kill him. And it's like, okay, sure, but, like, yeah.
It's a thing. It's a decision.
I also think it's kind of silly that there are like anti-Grisha hoods you can put on that save you from
I didn't
Grisha
get that.
powers.
It's like made by fabricator. Okay.
And I'm like, okay, but why would they save you? Like, straight up, if you still have eye holes or like your body's still available, a heart renderer can still just kill you.
Yeah, she can
especially
just make
somebody
their eyes
on
explode,
Parham
right?
can just like twist, like take your blood out of your body. Why would the hoods prevent this? I don't understand.
I didn't get it either.
I did not get that. I was like, this seems silly as well. Because they also got, like, taken down immediately after anyway, so I don't, like, this didn't do anything.
It's just the rules aren't ruling. The one thing about hard renders is they need to see the person that they want to impact, right? And just like you said, oh, we have these hoods on. Are they just walking around with, like, complete... But as long as she can still see their eyes and, like, stuff.
But the thing is also that we know that Grisha and Parham can do whatever the fuck they want anyway. So why would fabricator-made cloth stop them somehow? Like, I don't...
Were the fabricators also on Yurda Parham?
Yeah, but it's also like... But even if they made it, why would it be not affected? Because, like the implication for Grisha magic is that you can affect the world on, like, a molecular level, right? It's like, that's why it's called the small science. Yeah. Because, so if you understand each individual atom, you could just rip them apart, right? Like,
I mean, she sees the neurons firing and stuff like this.
And I'm like, I don't understand why anything would prevent that. Like, I totally get having, in your setting, having magic and having something that nullifies magic. I also have that in the story I'm writing, but I feel like you need to establish it to exist from the start, that this is a possible thing that can't exist at all. I don't remember the Grisha trilogy well enough to know if there was something like this. I know there was like Grisha Steel, but
I feel like Nina would know that this thing exists if it already existed in Shadow and Bone.
Yeah, I was like, this was so random, and it didn't.
She was brought up in a little palace,
and it didn't even do anything because they still got away anyway because she had already taken the parm anyway. So I don't understand the point.
It's such an insignificant little plot hurdle, right? Because if it was a big thing, then it could have been like, shit, how else do we get away? It's just to show Nina going, well, I don't care. Just ripping the hoods off.
Yeah, being like, well, I can improvise. Fuck you.
Yeah, like I can be a puppet master.
Cool. It's a bit like the prologue where it's like, okay, I can see why you would choose Tinkler, but also like I feel like it's not necessary at all.
Yeah. It feels a little bit like Leigh was like, oh wait, or somebody else, like an editor or somebody went, but wouldn't the Fjerdan be a little bit more prepared? And she just went, yeah, okay.
Sure.
I can write that in there if you
desire and I was like, that seems silly. But yeah, I mean, it that was also a part where I was like, why is this happening?
Yeah.
Question mark, question mark, question. But it was also over so quickly that I didn't think about it much. But because it was over so quickly, it's like, why include it at all?
Yeah, right? Exactly. Why even make it a thing?
Why bother? Yeah.
I also, when I reread it, because I can't remember how I felt when I first read it, the scene where they're breaking into the prison transport and they're making so much fucking noise and they're taking such a long... Like, Matthias is literally screaming, shouting at the other prisoners and like belting out these commands to them. And it says that the prisoner guards took a horse, went to the tree. How far away? Like, did they stop?
Yeah, and also, like, you're in the middle of nowhere. Nothing else is making sounds. It's the winter.
How far away did they stop the carriage?
Yeah.
Take the horse, walk to the tree, and then they say, oh, they were loud because they were shouting at each other and sawing through the tree and motivating the horse to get the tree. But that will not be louder than Matthias fucking screaming at the prisoners. And it's like, just, it makes... I thought, okay, they're gonna be like super quick, but no, they're taking their sweet time, taking the bags off and putting the bags back, and like
it really was just like, what the fuck, guys?
I was stressed because I was like, why are you so slow? Like, this should it feels like this should be faster.
Yeah,
you should.
I feel like that. It's just.
So there were some scenes of the heist where it was like,
I was also like, the fact that they were like having to, like, that Willen made a specialty like screwdriver to like
the diamond screwdriver.
Yeah, where it was like, but why though?
I also love the implication that Kaz based this whole fucking plan on the fact that the woman would be wearing a diamond necklace.
Yeah, I mean, it's
as
her,
if she wouldn't.
It's her signature like necklace, so I guess. But I think again, it was also just like, any diamond would have worked. I guess they were like, "Did you have to steal that one, Ines?" Where it was like, okay, but I'm also like, how did that woman immediately recognize her too? Like, again, if you don't expect someone to be there.
Oh, but no, I don't think that's too far-fetched with her and Ines, because it's like, she's like the one who got away to Kaz Brecker or Haskell of all the people, and who then got this huge reputation as this second hand, as the spider by the Crow Club. So that wasn't too crazy to me. That she would recognize her, but especially because she was dressed in clothing that
That's true.
she would recognize.
But I also felt like I was surprised how hysterical Helene became. I was like, why was she so super mad? And like, she was like, oh, Kaz Brekker is gonna be here. And I was like, you think the Fjordans know what that is supposed to mean? Girl, you look hysterical. Aren't you supposed to be competent?
Yeah, it felt a little bit out of character considering that she's like one of the big people.
She's a big player
in the barrel.
Yeah, very, very strange. There were a few moments where I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Where I also felt like if this was like an adult book written for adults, this would go differently.
It also felt super weird that they just dropped down and kind of, you know, the other girls from the house, and then nobody questions the fact that they're missing, kind of, and they're in this room before they can go to the bridge control, and the others are trying to get to them and be like, hey, come on, we need to go as a group. Why are you running away? Hey, come here.
Why are you running? Yeah.
And it works out. Nina just walk away constantly from, I think it was a Zemini girl.
Yeah.
Who was trying to get them back to the group. And Helene also doesn't really like count through.
I feel like the first half was much tighter in like writing than like during the heist, and I understand that is like complicated, and like again, if you in your mind have like thought about this 100 times and you know what happens, it probably feels a lot clearer than it ended up on paper. But yeah,
what I think was very like smart was the utilization of the clock.
Yeah,
in the chapters, because you had these moments where Cass was like, we're going to do this at this time, and then you kind of have that as a point in your head.
Yeah.
And then, for example, Nina talks about, oh no, it's like 11:45 or 10:15. I already need to be down in the cellar. Point of view break. It's not 2:45, but it's only 2:30. So like, okay, we still have a 15-minute time frame in which I thought that was very smart, because otherwise I think the whole
the jumping around
it would be so confusing.
Yeah, so, no, that was really good.
That was something where I was like, oh, I appreciate that. It's like a little cheat sheet.
I also really like that, like in the plan it's like, oh, we get in and out before anyone even notices. And then ultimately, they desecrate the holy symbol of the entire country while getting out.
Yeah.
And everybody obviously notices. Like, it's like the absolute opposite of what they planned should happen.
I also love that they're like, clearly had a very succinct plan for Code Black. I mean, good on them for being prepared and all, but it's just like immediately going, funny. Yeah, we have to jump a couple of colors in codes. We are going to black. We're gonna just run
this. It is very funny, yeah. But I also think it is also funny that the codes are color coded, because in a world without traffic lights, the coding is not intuitive at all. Yeah. Because we find them intuitive because we know these colors, because they've been around for forever, since like train traffic lights. Yeah. But for them, this is a very random assortment of colors, and it's very funny to me.
It's like at some point on the rainbow we're gonna start. Yeah. And then we're just gonna go into one direction, and when we can't go further, we're gonna go with black.
Very, very funny. Like, there's just like little things where you're like, hee hee.
Yeah. But, yeah, overall, I felt a little bit disappointed by the second half of the heist. Also, I mean, okay, Jarl Broom isn't like... I wouldn't say he's a bad villain, mini-villain. Yeah. But I also wouldn't say he's like I wasn't as scared of him as I probably should have been when reading.
Yeah, I think the thing is that, like, when you're reading, like, you know, since it's a book, Nina's obviously not going to die. But I also think, like, he doesn't need to be scary because his primary function is for Matthias to overcome his father figure, you know, to, like, be, like, to definitely sever the ties he had to Fjerda and to decide, actually, I don't want this anymore because I am not this person anymore. Which I think, like, works, like, even if you're like, okay, this guy is just some guy. Like, even if you don't have strong connection, you know he's, like, Matthias's father figure, so it's like, okay, yeah, that's meaningful for him. Yeah.
Though it was, I remember even when reading it for the first time, I thought, like, is Nina dumb right now?
Yeah, I was also like, Nina.
Like, okay, in the beginning, when he's like, oh, you know, let's go somewhere else, she's like, that kind of, you could still, like, buy it, but him, Edris Keller, who has kind of, you know, taken an oath to celibacy, taking the girl, like, right into to the holy tree, and okay, he takes her outside of the path because, as Nina suspects, he doesn't want her to be too close to the holy thing.
Yeah.
But as soon as he's like, do you want to see the treasure stuff, I'd be out of there. I'm like, you know what? I don't. I have somebody else to bet.
Yeah, it's like, I also feel like, I mean, even if she thinks, like, okay, I can't, like, say no now because I was interested before.
Yeah.
But I feel like the moment he was, like, showing off the Grisha, I was like, oh, he knows. Like, he obviously knows. And, like, at that point, I was like, Nina, you can just drop him. Like, he can't prevent you from doing that, right? Like, you don't need to play along. It felt like very dense because, like, I feel like if you're in that situation, it's like, you're like, okay, either he recognizes me or he wants to, like, fuck me while torturing a Grisha because that gets him off. And that's also not a good place to be. So I better, like, drop him unconscious immediately, steal the keys, and look for myself. Like, she didn't need him at that time. Like, she was already down there. There were no witnesses. She could have just, you know,
Especially because there's her one little part of introspection where she's like, it's dawning on her that she's in this facility in the middle of the heart of Fjerda with one of the most dangerous people to her at this moment, all alone. She doesn't even know if the others know that she's there.
Yeah.
And it's like, could you add
girly,
a little bit...
like, you can just, like, choke him immediately. You don't need to wait. Like, I don't understand. Like, it felt like kind of like she was a little stupid so the plot could happen, where it was like...
She was a little stupid teenage girl.
You could have also at the point where she tries to, like, you know, kill him and he's, like, expecting it, so they're fighting, and then Matthias shows up and he's like, oh, stop her, you know, and you can have the confrontation like that. Her being locked in the room is kind of like, I don't know.
I mean, even if she wanted to include the room, right?
Yeah.
They could have had the kerfuffle, the fight, and since, you know, he's prepared for it, she can't. He simply does the thing where he puts her hands together and just pushes her into the room and closes the door because she, like, gets turned around over. This is a guy who has fought a lot of Grisha and who's, like, very experienced in it. So him being able to kind of like a girl inside an area that he knows and that he can have the upper hand in.
Yeah. I feel like there could have been different ways to do this than Nina being a little bit very stupid.
Like, not her going, this is a weird sex dungeon, and just pushing her into it.
Yeah,
so I do agree. What did she expect from the door looking like all the other prison doors?
Yeah, that really was like a moment
with the same
like,
button next to the door. Like, But yeah, that was something I wanted to talk about, the heist and your thoughts.
Yeah, no, I did. I also think I remembered feeling like didn't remember much of like the second half of the heist. I was like, I don't even remember what happens. And now I know why I don't remember, because it's really convoluted. There's like a lot of things happening back and forth, and you're not entirely sure where things happen. Like, it's like, okay, now they're at the sacred tree and they're falling into the water, but you don't exactly know where that, like,
where do they end
leads.
up?
Like, right? You're like, where are they now exactly? Like, it, and also what happens in, like, with the diamond drill and whatever. I was like, what are they doing again?
And they're struggling so long with the stupid chain from the door.
I was like, don't you have explosives? Just set an explosive.
It's like the alarm is already, like, going.
Yeah.
One more little explosion is not gonna...
Yeah, I was also like, dude, you can just drop that.
Like, you even have Wylan with you.
Yeah, there was just several points where I was like, why are we doing this like this? But, like, it's like, yeah, it's fine.
But it's the second part. I mean, I commend her for being able to still tie up so beautifully in the end with the whole plot. But I think the heist could have been a bit more.
I think the thing is, the second part of the heist especially feels very I'm describing movie scenes to you. Yeah. Like, this would work well in a visual format, but if you don't have the exact visuals, you're just kind of confused. You're like, wait, where is the glass? What's behind which glass? Where are they being shot at from?
It also just sounds so funky to have them, like, hold on to a tank downhill.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why I'm also a bit salty with Netflix. I would have loved to see the Six of Crows actually doing the heist, because they were a very fun part of the show. They were so well cast. Each of them really understood to a very deep level the character that they were playing, and like the motivations, and had it down to the behavior and such. And yeah, I would have loved to see those scenes. Yeah. I would have loved to see Inej climb up that it's not an oven.
Incinerator.
Thank you. I'm finding so many words for this thing today.
I mean, yeah, that's
to climb up the incinerator and have that scene at the end, to see, like, okay, we do see a little bit of the barrel in Shadow and Bone, but to actually, like, genuinely really see Ketterdam for a bit longer than the scenes that we got in the show. I'm also salty for them canceling the show, because they finally do not go according to the book.
Yeah.
Like, Alina does not lose her powers. She actually does end up getting married to Nikolai. The Mal goes off and becomes a new Stormhond, which I think is such an interesting, like, thing for him to do. Inej goes, I think, with him, because, you know, she's all up for that. They have, like, a very, very cute scene where she says goodbye to Jesper, and the huge thing where it's like, her and Cass are not really having their talk, and it's like, the drama, the pain. And in the end, Alina kind of, you know, does her shadow thing, the shadow smite cut, and it's like, just her expression, you know, seeing that she kind of low-key liked doing that. It's like, I wanted that,
no,
and they took it from us. It's like, they took it at the fun part. It's not cool. Yeah, those are my final thoughts.
Okay.
It just sad to see this awesome cast go, because I think first of all, I think no other studio is ever going to touch this project again, and second of all, I think even if they do, they're not going to find a cast that was this good.
That's true.
Gotta be honest about it. So what would you rate just Six of Crows, not Crooked Kingdom?
Just Six of Crows is 5 stars. It's really good. Like,
it's a solid 5, right?
We picked apart a lot of stuff, but, like, the truth of it is that, like, it is really well written. And like just from like the prose is really good, and like it is about the characters, and the character writing is really, really strong.
It's ridiculously well
that makes
done.
the world building not super important.
Yeah. So all of the complaining, all of the nitpicking.
Yeah, but it's
like 5
like,
stars.
Yeah, it's like I feel like you have to be fair, right? Because we do a lot of nitpicking for world building for the not so good books too. So I feel like it's only fair to give the same treatment to stuff you like to be like, yeah, it wasn't. But the truth really is that like stories aren't about the world building. The world building is there to facilitate a good story. And if the story works, it works. And like if you then go back and look at the world building and you go, I don't know about this, Chief. The story still is like super entertaining and like good. So like it is what it is.
It's genuinely, I mean, 5 stars for me as well. I think taking all of her books that I've finished so far, I think Six of Crows is my favorite, simply because it's just so scrumptious. The other books, I mean, there's scenes in the Shadow and Bone series that make me go, oh yeah, I love that. But none of the whole books coherently are hitting it for me as much as Six of Crows. And it's just really damn good.
Yeah, I also think that might be my favorite. I also really, really like Language of Thorns, but I feel like that's very difficult to compare to just a standard book because it's a collection of fictional fairy tales. Yeah. So like, it's very different, and like it's hard to compare because
it's 4 stories, right? Or 3?
4 or 5. I don't know. It's the
but
last one's really long.
It's very beautiful.
It is also really, really beautiful. And I'm like genuinely, I also like fairy tales generally, so I also thought that like, obviously that would appeal to me, but but it's so different in what it is that comparing it to a novel is very, very comparing apples to oranges. It's like, well, it's good, but it's not the same thing at all.
It also felt like such a force of nature when it came out, and like this kind of Six of Crows, the story,
true.
The theme.
A thing about it is that like the way people talk about it actually made me like it less, because lot of people talk about it like it's like the best book ever written. They talk about it like it's the only heist story that exists, like this is a unique, fascinating idea, and they talk about the characters in a way where I'm like, I don't think you read the book right.
But I feel like that's normal fandom behavior, right?
I mean, yeah, it is, but it also makes me want to go like, yeah, it's really good, but it's not like the pinnacle of literature, right? Like I will totally agree with people like in the YA landscape of the last 5 years, this is unusually good. This is exceptionally good. But also, I've read adult books, which I think are much better as well, where I'm like, this isn't like the only good book out there, and people hold it up on this insane pedestal where I'm like, okay, I feel like we need to be a little more realistic.
I think you always have to see it in scope. I think the majority of people who do praise Six of Crows that much only look at the YA spectrum.
That's true.
Because it would be insane to say that Six of Crows is like the best fucking book. If you look at all of the age groups and genres and everything, I think they're looking at YA. And I think to a certain extent it's also like just fan conviction for a medium, and I think due to the majority, not the majority, to the abundance of characters we have, 6, and they're the way that everybody can find someone or something in these characters to kind of identify with and kind of relate to also helps for teenagers to hype this up even more.
That's true. It is one of the rare, really popular books that deserves to be this popular.
Yeah, it deserves to be
legitimately.
hyped up.
Like it's. I would say it's like on par with, I feel like ACOTAR is something in popularity. Like, if people talk about current fantasy books, like, it's always mentioned, even though it also came out quite a while ago. Like, at this point,
nearly next year it will 10 years.
So yeah, it's like, it's definitely held up. It's still, like, really good.
Yeah.
And, like, I mean, it's not hard to hold up in the YA market, because I feel like the market's gotten worse overall, so...
That's true.
You know.
or not worse, but, like, watered down, I feel like.
Yeah, a lot of... I mean, it's... I would say worse, because publishing has gotten worse, like, editors have been fired, their numbers have been... Like, their hours have been cut, like... It is inevitable that what comes out of the publishing machine will be worse. Because, like, there's just not as much time given to each book anymore.
That's actually become a discourse on Book Talk, and Bookstagram probably too, of people going, well, there's now a lot of, like, fast books, in a way where they're, like, being sprouted out, basically, and then the other party saying, well, you cannot fault... Like, isn't it a good thing that even more people can now realize their dreams and writing books, getting them published, getting them out of there? And then the others go, yeah, but quality is shit. And the others go, but isn't it nice to have a bigger, like, diverse group of authors? And then the others go, the fuck is being diverse about these authors? And it's just like, you know, this chorus of people going back and forth.
I will say that, like... genuinely, like, if people are like, wow, more people get the chance, and it's like, people have been putting out insane amounts of garbage in, like, self-publishing for forever. Like, the market is set up for people to release, like, one book a month or something if they want to stay high in the rankings, which is insane, and there is no way for these books to be consistently good. It is fast fashion. What people, like, often hold up now is, like, those books, like, what's it, Fourth Wing, and stuff, and their publisher, where it's like, these aren't the same as fast fashion, though. They are being produced very quickly, but they are not sold at cheap prices. These are sold at premium prices,
like a high market value.
Like, they are also shit, released quickly, but they are not fast fashion. They're something else, which also sucks, but it's not the same.
Yeah.
It's, like, is what I would say. Because, like, a part of the fast fashion is that it's so cheap that you can easily buy it, which I feel like is more of the market of, like, Kindle Unlimited and, like, ebooks generally, like, especially in the romance category where people read, like, a book a day or whatever, like, romance readers read a lot, so there's a lot being published all the time, which just all sucks ass, because, again... writing a book in, like, 4 weeks or less doing that every month, there's no way these are good. Like, literally, there's no way these are good or unique. Like, if you want them to be consistently good, you just have to recycle the same good thing over and over again. But then it's not unique. And if you want them to be creative in some way, there's no way they can be consistently good. You'll burn out. Like, there's no way to... It's just impossible.
Yeah, to go along with it.
Yeah.
Well, having that little note at the end... of our episode.
Yeah.
I hope you guys enjoyed it. We definitely enjoyed doing this episode and reading this book.
This was really fun.
And I guess I hope you join us next time soon.
Yeah. Until next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.